Chapter 1406. His voice was imbued with paramount divine might, and it proliferated throughout heaven and earth. This was the first time Enlil had unleashed his great divine might technique, and even he didn't know how powerful it was. This spell technique had to be quite powerful after he had conquered 2,000 harems. In that instant, all of the blood tribe powerful beings felt as if they had been confronted by the mightiest god in this world, and they were unable to muster up any thoughts of resistance as they knelt to the ground. Even the return to void stage mighty figures trembled uncontrollably as they tried to prop themselves up from the ground. One of the three holy golden guardians, Ada, forced herself not to kneel, but her features had already turned deathly pale, and cold sweat was beginning to appear on her forehead. She looked at the godlike man with astonishment etched on her face. Is this Enlil's might? How could it be so terrifying? Isn't he only at the return to void stage? Why was this sense of oppression even more terrifying than when she was facing her master? Not only were the blood tribe powerful beings unable to bear this pressure, even Emperor Deng felt as if he were facing an existence of a higher level than himself. Where are the holy worshippers? Do you think they would dare to step forward at a time like this? Emperor Deng couldn't help but burst into laughter. You want them to step forward and die with you? Charge! We'll die for the holy leader! Glory to the holy blood cult! Boom, boom, boom! A series of violent explosions suddenly erupted among the crowd. A series of devastating spell techniques began to appear. 13 return to void stage mighty figures suddenly launched attacks toward the blood tribe powerful beings around them. One had to realize that return to void initial stage mighty figures couldn't even safely absorb Enlil's blood. These were all return to void intermediate stage and return to void final stage mighty figures, and their attacks were extremely fearsome. Over 10,000 blood tribe powerful beings were instantly engulfed by a barrage of spell technique. Emperor Deng was dumbstruck. Most of the blood tribe powerful beings had become holy worshippers? What Deng didn't know was that ever since the blood tribe mighty figures had absorbed Enlil's blood, they had developed an instinctive connection with him. They had already acknowledged Enlil from the bottom of their hearts. They loved Enlil, so they naturally had to accept everything about him, including his human identity. Golden Saint Protector! Hurry up and kill these traitors! Emperor Deng roared with rage. The three holy golden guardians had already sprung into action even without Emperor Deng's instruction. All of them were powerful beings at the return to void pinnacle stage, and it would be no problem for them to join forces with the other blood tribe mighty figures to take care of the 13 traitorous blood tribe mighty figures. A golden divine Tao light erupted from Ada's body, and she held a dagger tightly in her hand as she pounced toward the nearest return to void intermediate stage mighty figure at an extremely fast speed. Shao Chen sheathed his saber, and with a flash of golden light, the Almighty did not even have time to react before he was cut in half. Blood Robe Azura Sect Master Ken, I truly never expected that even you would betray us. Die. Ada spoke calmly. The body that had been sliced in half was still screaming in agony, but it was quickly burned into nothingness by the golden divine Tao. Emperor Deng couldn't help but burst into laughter upon seeing this. You're just a bunch of rabble after all. Regardless of whether it's you or your so-called holy worshippers, none of you are going to get out of here alive. You want to kill all of my holy worshippers with just 3 mighty figures at the return to void pinnacle stage? Enlil knew that among his remaining 12 holy worshippers, there were 2 at the return to void pinnacle stage. If the 3 holy golden guardians unleash their combined mystic techniques at the same time, they can even battle a Tao integration stage mighty figure for a short time. Do you think they'll be able to kill all of these people? Emperor Deng chuckled coldly. Right at this moment, another female's blood-curdling wail sounded. Golden Demon Guardian! Ada let loose a cry of surprise upon seeing this, and her calm and collected expression had completely disappeared. A holy golden guardian in a black robe was enshrouded within a rainbow divine light, and the terrifying spatial power twisted and warped her body. In the next instant, the holy golden guardian's body disappeared. There was only a black ball left between heaven and earth with a bulging stomach, and it let loose a loud burp. An extremely beautiful fairy stowed the ball into her storage ring with a dainty smile on her face. The three holy golden guardians can battle a Tao integration stage mighty figure when they combine their powers. What about those two? Emperor Yi Deng. Who are you? What's that ball of yours? Ada stared at the little fairy with astonishment on her face, and she didn't dare to do anything else. The Golden Demon Guardian was a return to void final stage mighty figure, but it had been recruited by a little fairy. This was beyond her imagination. Even a Tao integration stage super mighty figure wouldn't be able to insta-kill a mighty figure who had already attained the power of the divine Tao. My ball is called a pokeball, and it can capture all kinds of monsters. You better behave yourself, or I'm going to capture you as well. Tina raised her head with her hands on her hip. The pokeball could capture all enemies with cultivation bases lower than Tina's. Tina was already at the Return to Void pinnacle stage, so she could naturally capture the Holy Golden Guardian. It was a pity that the pokeball could only capture one enemy in a short time. Otherwise, she was going to capture all of these blood tribe cultivators. Ada had already been intimidated by Tina, and she really did stand on the spot with a cautious expression, not daring to do anything. This little fairy is so terrifying. Even one of the three holy golden guardians was killed with ease. We really can't hold on much longer. All of the blood tribe powerful beings fled for their lives with expressions of shock and horror on their faces. The holy worshippers' morale was greatly boosted, and they pounced toward their enemies with even greater fervor. The blood tribe powerful beings were completely routed. All of this was because Tina had conceded a ball. Emperor Yi Deng humphed coldly before pouncing toward Enlin. Emperor Yi Deng was completely humiliated. It was far more satisfying to just kill Enlin on the spot than to waste words on him. Big sister, that strange ball of hers can only be used once. Otherwise, she wouldn't have just threatened us, the remaining black-robed holy golden protector whispered to Ada as he drifted over to them. Ada immediately came to a realization. That's right, little sister Jean Ling, let's go. Ada and Jean Ling looked at each other before transforming into two streaks of golden light that pounced toward Tina. One of them wielded a frosty dagger while the other charged forward atop a golden wave. Even though the two holy golden guardians were no match for a Tao integration stage super mighty figure, they were still able to crush all Return to Void stage mighty figures. Tina didn't dare to underestimate her opponent, and she charged forward with her Heart Lotus Ice sword in hand. Enlin slashed his evil slaying sword toward the oncoming Emperor Yi Deng. Evil sword technique, Royal Divine Monarch. An extremely powerful sword intent swept forth, as if a divine monarch had descended upon the world. Boom! Black energy clashed with the power of the crimson divine Tao, turning heaven and earth red and black. The most intense battle in the history of the Blood Tribe had finally erupted at the Immortal Spirit Paradise. Chapter 1407. Enlin and Emperor Yi Deng's attacks collided, and the earth within a radius of over 50 kilometers tremored violently. Enlin and Emperor Yi Deng both stumbled back a few steps at the same time. An expression of surprise appeared on Emperor Yi Deng's face. I didn't think that you would be this powerful after reaching the Return to Void stage. No wonder the Celestial Dharch agreed to let me take my revenge as long as you reach the Return to Void stage. A faint smile appeared on Enlin's face. Not only was the origin energy of the netherworld revolving around his body, but he was also enshrouded by his divine flame and holy flame. That's right, not only had he used the origin energy of the netherworld, but he had also activated his fire god mode. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to withstand Emperor Yi Deng's attack. On the other battlefield, the 12 holy worshippers were fighting against tens of thousands of blood tribe powerful beings, but they still held the upper hand. They were extremely powerful and fearless, like the most fervent believers, and all they wanted to do was burn their own light and heat in front of their holy leader. The other blood tribe powerful beings in the immortal spirit paradise didn't have the same mentality as them. Most of them were only here to spectate, so why would they fight to the death? Thus, the blood tribe army was forced into retreat. Boom! A gargantuan ice lotus appeared on the ground, encompassing an area of over 50 kilometers. All of the worlds touched by the ice lotus were transformed into a world of extreme frost. Snow and ice flew through the air, gale-force winds howled, and lethal sword intent swept through the air. Some of the blood tribe powerful beings who had accidentally been swept into this place were frozen solid amid blood-curdling cries, while others were sliced into several dozen pieces by the merciless ice blades before being frozen by the extreme frost. Even Ada and Jean Ling, who were the most powerful beings among them, were slowed down by this place. This was the Lotus Realm technique that Tina had unleashed after activating her Heart Lotus Ice Sword to its maximal extent. Grand Golden Cloud Dream. Jean Ling swept through the air atop a massive golden wave, which transformed into countless weapons. There were golden swords that shone with an intimidating light, giant hammers that were as large as mountains, spears that could pierce through the void. Every single one of these weapons possessed extremely terrifying power, and they could easily split apart the killing moves of the Lotus World's ice blades. There were hundreds and thousands of weapons aimed at Tina, and the number was almost endless. My supreme metal liquid can cut through all things and destroy a world. How can a mere Lotus World block it? Die. Jean Ling unleashed all of her power as her weapons swept through the air. A golden light flashed through Tina's beautiful blue eyes. Divine technique, divine mirror image creation. She clapped her hands together, and a blue circular ice surface appeared in front of her like a mirror. Its surface reflected the countless weapons that were coming at it. Waves of golden energy surged like ripples. Then, a weapon that was no different from the one in front of it appeared in terms of appearance and energy. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Countless weapons shot forth from the mirror before Tina, clashing with the countless weapons unleashed by the gold spirits as a series of terrifying booms and explosions erupted. Flying sword against flying sword, spear against spear. Every collision resulted in mutual destruction. You can even replicate my power? There's actually such a high-level spell in this world? Jean Ling's expression became extremely grave as she twisted her wrist, and a long golden needle appeared in her hand. However, before she could continue her attack, she realized that the elf in front of her had suddenly disappeared. Inexplicably, her heart skipped a beat as an extremely dangerous premonition surged through her entire body. An incoming flying sword made of liquid Taijin collided with the original flying sword and shattered it into pieces. Then, it destroyed hundreds of weapons as if it was the sharpest blade in the world. It's you! You transformed yourself into a sword? Jean Ling let loose a cry of surprise as the flying sword appeared right before her. Never would she have thought that Tina would be able to merge herself into a spell technique in such a short time, thereby allowing her to approach her like an assassin. After a brief moment of astonishment, a faint smile appeared on Jean Ling's face as the long golden needle in her hand shot forth. This was the soul-crushing god-slaying needle, a high-rank immortal tool. The needle was able to pierce straight into the target's essence, and it could even crush the enemy's consciousness. The soul-crushing god-slaying needle was extremely fast, and it struck the oncoming golden sword in the blink of an eye. Bam! The grand golden flying sword exploded. However, Jean Ling had anticipated that Tina would be forced to return to her original form and perish on the spot. The flying sword exploded into a vast expanse of golden water droplet. One of the water droplets flew toward Jean Ling, and a petite figure gradually expanded within the water droplet. Jean Ling instantly understood what had happened. Tina had transformed the flying sword into tens of thousands of independent spaces before her soul-crushing god-slaying needle had struck her, and she had hidden herself within one of those spaces. In other words, the soul-crushing god-slaying needle had only struck a useless body. Sumeru in a mustard seed, what kind of spatial power did one have to possess to achieve this? Tina's body emerged from the water droplet with a cold light flashing in her eyes as she wielded the bright blue sword in her hand before slashing it toward Jean Ling in an extremely efficient manner. She was traveling at such a fast speed at such a close distance. Jean Ling had just unleashed her most powerful attack, so she had no spare energy to defend herself. Whoosh! The blade of the sword tore through the black-robed woman's body before slicing her in half. Jean Ling! An enraged cry erupted from nearby. Ada was already charging toward Tina with her dagger. She had wanted to take advantage of the battle between Jean Ling and Tina to deal a fatal blow to Tina, but she didn't expect Tina's attacks to be so unpredictable and powerful, defeating Jean Ling in just 2 or 3 moves. She didn't even have time to react. Ada's dagger was extremely fast, and it was imbued with the paramount power of the metal divine Tao as well as the profound and ethereal true intent of slaughter. She was the most powerful assassin in the blood tribe, and she was also an assassin who liked to stand in front of you and tell you that she was going to kill you. Her actions revealed her confidence in killing Tina with a single strike. Before the dagger had even reached Tina, a passageway had already been torn open in the air, and a massive trench several dozen kilometers in length had been torn into the ground by her killing intent. A faint smile appeared on Tina's face as she turned around with her immortal sword in hand. The blade of her sword struck the edge of the dagger at an extremely precise angle, and a peculiar power deflected the dagger's trajectory. This was the first time that Ada had felt as if her dagger wasn't in her own hands. It was as if the dagger had a mind of its own as it stabbed toward Tina's side. Both the blade and the killing intent were twisted at the same time. She and Tina brushed past each other just like that. No! An immortal sword had appeared in Tina's other hand, and as it brushed past Ada's shoulder, it slashed down toward her back at an extremely fast speed. Whoosh! A snowy white sword projection pierced through heaven and earth. Ada had already summoned her golden divine Tao to protect herself, but a gash was still inflicted on her back from which blood gushed forth before being frozen into blood crystals by the extreme cold. She ignored her injuries and frantically tried to open up a distance between herself and Tina. Ada was once known as the most powerful being below the Tao integration stage in the blood tribe, but she was truly scared now. The little fairy had defeated her and Jean Ling, who were both at the Return to Void pinnacle stage, in an extremely short period of time. Big sister, we can't beat her. Jean Ling's body had been sliced in half, and she had only just managed to put her body back together with great difficulty as she hurtled back in retreat. I was wondering how powerful you two were, but it looks like you're not that powerful after all. A faint smile appeared on Tina's face as she made her way toward the two of them. She appeared to be moving very slowly, but she was steadily closing the distance between them. After progressing to the Return to Void stage and becoming the goddess of creation of the divine mirror world, Tina possessed power comparable to that of a Return to Void final stage mighty figure. Now that she had progressed to the Return to Void pinnacle stage through the upgrade of the divine mirror world, no one knew just how powerful she was aside from herself. This was also why Tina had decided to come to the core region of the blood tribe with Enlin. Chapter 1408. Tina chased after the 2 holy golden guardians, and the morale of the holy worshippers was greatly boosted once again. Emperor Yi Deng's attacks became even more violent upon seeing this, and each and every one of his attacks was imbued with the power to destroy heaven and earth. His divine Tao was the Rakshasa blood Tao, and the more he fought, the more blood his hands were stained with, thereby allowing him to unleash more power. Enlin also experienced firsthand the terrifying power of Emperor Yi Deng's fists. Each and every one of Emperor Yi Deng's fists was imbued with an invincible might. If he was the slightest bit careless, he could be pulverized into dust. Rakshasa blood Tao, heavenly wheel seal. Emperor Yi Deng's hair and beard stood on end as his entire body was enshrouded in a crimson mist of the divine Tao. He let loose an almighty roar as he made a circular seal with his hands before abruptly pressing it toward Enlin's body. Rumble, the heavens began to collapse. A gargantuan seal enshrouded the entire sky before descending with boundless power. Countless blood-tribe powerful beings' expressions shifted drastically as they fled into the distance with all their might. The terrifying aura emanating from the seal made it difficult for them to even breathe, and the earth was already beginning to crack open before the seal had even completely descended. Enlin could sense the power of the seal, and he finally unleashed his Star Vein Divine Technique again. Star Vein Divine Technique, Fire God Mode, and Origin Energy of the Netherworld were unleashed at the same time. If it weren't for the fact that his body of the War God was immensely powerful, his body would instantly explode from the rapid increase in power. Vanquish the heavens and slay all evil, eternal night. He roared as his evil-slaying sword unleashed a domain of darkness that eroded heaven and earth around him. At the same time, he slashed his sword toward the seal descending upon him. In his current state, Enlin was able to pummel the Tao integration stage Fenghuia in melee combat. Now that he had unleashed the evil-slaying sword's final technique, just how terrifying would it be? The invisible dark sword technique clashed with the heavenly wheel seal, and two different types of energy surged violently. A series of inky black rifts extended through the sky, and destructive gale force winds swept forth for tens of thousands of meters. The gargantuan seal was gradually becoming riddled with cracks. Emperor Yi Deng's heart jolted with astonishment upon seeing this. His heavenly wheel seal was his signature technique, and it was extremely effective even against Tao integration stage super mighty figures. But now, it had been shattered by a return to void stage cultivator? Enlin's eternal night and heavenly wheel seal disappeared almost at the same time. The spell techniques from the two sides had already razed over 100 of the immortal spirit paradise's mountains to the ground. The once immortal realm had already been reduced to rubble. Enlin panted heavily. The final technique he had just unleashed had already expended a lot of his energy, yet he was only able to fight Emperor Yi Deng to a draw. Emperor Yi Deng was indeed very powerful. He was even more powerful than immortal King Fenghuia. Enlin pulled out another immortal pill from his storage ring before swallowing it. Yun. If he were of an star, he would and would be he. He would ten he more than he and again, and more powerful in and. He wholly of Lin of all of his. Enlin still felt like his own combat prowess was still a little lacking. What he didn't know was that his battle with Emperor Yi Deng had caused a huge commotion in the Blood Tribe. Everyone's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. Emperor Yi Deng was already one of the most powerful overlords in the Blood Tribe. In their hearts, Emperor Yi Deng was a paramount being. However, such a peerless powerful being was actually able to hold his own against a return to void stage cultivator. Ada and Jean Ling were still waiting for Emperor Yi Deng to take care of Enlin so that he could come and save them. However, it appeared that the two of them were fighting back and forth. Isn't sect leader Enlin supposed to be as powerful as a return to void final stage super mighty figure? How is he able to fight a Tao integration stage super mighty figure now? He was at the soul formation pinnacle stage before, but he's only at the return to void initial stage now, so he's naturally different. Holy F***CK. Can't he show some respect to powerful beings of higher cultivation bases? He's always fighting above his cultivation base. What's going to happen when he reaches the Tao integration stage? Long live the Holy Leader! The Holy Leader is the future hope of the Blood Tribe. Some of the holy worshippers were struck by a sense of pride upon seeing Enlin's display of might. Only a return to void stage super mighty figure could stand up to a Tao integration stage super mighty figure. Emperor Yi Deng's expression became even more grave. Just a return to void stage super mighty figure was already this terrifying. What would happen if Enlin was allowed to continue to develop? He had immense potential and couldn't be allowed to live. Enlin also wore a grave expression. He had already sent a message to Cassidy and the others, telling them to take this opportunity to escape from the Blood Tribe Holy Land while he waited outside to provide support. However, even after such a long time, there was still no response from within the Red Palace. Could it be that they had encountered some trouble within the Holy Land? Emperor and Mang had also entered the Holy Land to hunt them down. This was not an unreasonable speculation. With this in mind, Enlin immediately made up his mind to enter the Holy Land of the Blood Tribe. The Blood Patriarch could sense the blood of Cassidy and the others, and the enchantment barrier of the Holy Land only allowed living beings with blood that he approved of to enter. So, as the master of the blood that had transformed Cassidy and the others, did he have the right to enter the Holy Land of the Blood Tribe? Enlin was quite curious, and he decided to give it a try. However, what would happen to Tina if he did that? As the guardian of the Divine Mirror World, Tina's Fenghuiyan could only move about within the Divine Mirror World, and she couldn't enter the Holy Land. If Enlin were to disappear, she would have to face the Holy Golden Guardians and Emperor Yi Deng. If that were to happen, she would be in an extremely perilous situation. Enlin hesitated. He had to think of another way to get out of this predicament. Right at this moment, an extremely powerful aura quickly approached from the north of the Immortal Spirit Paradise. Emperor and Mang's personal guards are here to assist. A black cloud drifted toward them from afar. There were over 10,000 Blood Tribe powerful beings on the black cloud, including several return-to-void stage mighty figures. They formed a battle formation that exuded an extremely vast and terrifying aura. There was also a powerful aura approaching from the west of the Immortal Spirit Paradise. Emperor Fu Tian's personal guards are here to assist. Countless powerful beings in crimson robes descended atop Crimson Pegasi, and their auras were even more terrifying than those of the previous wave of enemies. Enlin was a little depressed. He was just thinking about how to get out of this predicament when the Blood Tribe's reinforcements suddenly arrived. This was like adding snow to snow. Emperor Yi Deng chortled with glee. The reinforcements from the emperors have arrived. They will use a special trapping technique, and in conjunction with my power, you won't be able to escape. The 10,000 Blood Tribe powerful beings on the black cloud roared in unison like thunder. Charge! 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 An enormous aura swept forth, and Enlin was struck by a sense of pressure, as if a storm was approaching. However, a sudden turn of events suddenly took place. The black cloud beneath the feet of Emperor and Mang's personal guards suddenly burst into flames. The white flames quickly spread for over 50 kilometers, and the terrifying heat warped the space around them as if they were going to incinerate the entire heavens. Chapter 1409. The black cloud underfoot suddenly transformed into a boundless sea of white flames. Countless Blood Tribe powerful beings let loose blood-curdling wails as one powerful being after another was incinerated into nothingness. Only a few returned to void stage mighty figures managed to escape from Emperor and Mang's powerful personal guard squad. All of the other Blood Tribe powerful beings had been incinerated into nothingness. Everyone was given a fright upon seeing this. Enlin immediately became excited. He was far too familiar with this power. Sure enough, a proud and holy cry erupted from the heavens. A woman in a jade dress appeared before the Blood Tribe powerful beings with holy flames revolving around her body, and she wielded her dragon sparrow sword. She raised her chin proudly and spoke in a cold voice. "Do you think you're going to kill me with just a bunch of trash like you?" Enlin's heart was filled with concern at the sight of the woman. "Xiaolan, why are you here?" That's right, this was none other than Su Xiaolan. "I told you, don't abandon me just because there's danger. I'm so powerful, so why can't I face these dangers with you?" Su Xiaolan stared at Enlin with determination and stubbornness that no one would be able to change. Unlin opened his mouth, but he didn't know what to say. He looked at the determined woman in the distance, and an indescribable sense of elation welled up in his heart. All right, let's save Cassidy and the others together. Unlin nodded. The other Blood Tribe army riding atop their crimson Pegasi immediately changed their formation upon seeing Su Xiaolan's attack. Over 10,000 Blood Tribe powerful beings stood in a certain position and used a mystic technique to link together to summon a blood demon over 30,000 feet tall with a pair of axes in its hands. The blood demon wore a suit of crimson armor, and it had the head of a ferocious bull and the arms of an ape. Not only was its defensive prowess extremely powerful, but all living beings that dared to approach it would have their vitality stripped away. Roar! It let loose an almighty roar as soon as it appeared, and the terrifying sound waves instantly pulverized a mountain before it. The eyes of the Blood Tribe powerful beings in the immortal spirit paradise finally lit up with hope at the sight of this fiend celestial monster. It's here. The battle form of Great Emperor Fu Tian's personal guards, the Divine Ox Blood Demon. The power it can unleash for a short period of time can even rival that of a cultivator at the Return to Void Pinnacle stage. This time we should be able to relax a little. The morale of the powerful beings of the Blood Tribe finally rose a little. The mighty beings who had originally wanted to escape also decided to fight for a while longer to observe the situation. Unlin looked at the towering blood demon before him and said with a smile, "Xiaolan, I'll leave this blood demon to you. There's no need for me to do anything." Su Xiaolan sheathed her dragon sparrow sword behind her back, clearly not planning to intervene. Unlin was puzzled. Then who will deal with it? Emperor Yi Deng's expression immediately shifted upon hearing this, and he yelled, "Look out!" The blood demon stared at Emperor Yi Deng with a blank expression. At this moment, a vast expanse of dazzling starry sky suddenly appeared behind it. It was clearly daytime, but the stars there were extremely dazzling, as if the night sky and the daytime sky were two completely different worlds. A gargantuan battleship enshrouded in starlight appeared in the sky. It was over 50 kilometers in length and obscured the entire sky. The 30,000 feet tall blood demon was nothing more than a miniature person in its eyes. At this moment, an extremely dazzling light burst forth from the massive, inky black mouth of the main cannon. The energy imbued within the cannon struck fear into the hearts of onlookers. Starfire Annihilation Cannon, fire! A female's voice erupted throughout heaven and earth. The main cannon exploded violently, and it was as dazzling as the sun. Billions of stars converged together before blasting forth with the power of annihilation, creating a river of flames that hurtled through the sky toward the blood demon's body. Roar! The blood demon swung its twin axes through the air, slicing the river of flames in half, as if it were a pair of divine axes capable of parting heaven and earth. The attack unleashed by the blood demon was powerful enough to shatter even the divine Tao. However, even if one were to draw a knife to cut water, there would always be a time when one's strength would run out, but the meteor flame river was endless. Kacha! The blood demon's twin axes began to shatter before crumbling. Roar! An expression of shock and horror appeared on the blood demon's face, as the river of flames imbued with the power of annihilation had already engulfed its body. The blood demon struggled to escape, but its body was soon torn apart by the Starfire Annihilation Cannon before it was pulverized. All of Emperor Fu Tian's personal guards were completely exposed to the Starfire Annihilation Cannon, and they didn't even get a chance to cry out before they were engulfed. A river of annihilation extended from east to west, leaving a ravine in the distance with no end in sight. The power of the stars dissipated. The space around them became completely empty. All of Emperor Fu Tian's personal guards, over 10,000 blood tribe powerful beings, had been annihilated. Insta-killed? All of the blood tribe powerful beings who were still engaged in battle were dumbstruck. What the hell is that thing? A battleship can insta-kill a blood demon at the Return to Void Pinnacle stage? Even the 12 holy worshippers stared at the scenes unfolding before their eyes with dumbstruck expressions. Some of the holy worshippers seemed to have thought of something as they exclaimed with excitement, "I know! That's the secret weapon of our holy blood cult. It's the holy leader's battleship." And Lin's lips twitched upon hearing this. That didn't really seem to be the case. This unimaginably powerful battleship was none other than the 4-9 Immortal Sect's strategic weapon, the Starfire battleship. Geez, why didn't they tell me that the battleship had been repaired? Did they suddenly fly it over just to give me a fright? And Lin chuckled. Hee little un, this isn't the complete battleship. There are still some functions that haven't been repaired, but it should be able to hold its own against Dao integration stage super mighty figures for now. Lu Qianhuan's voice sounded from within the battleship, and Lin was a little concerned. Speaking of which, is it really okay to have a lousy pilot like you as the main pilot of the Starfire battleship? Don't look down on me, Lu Qianhuan. I'm very good at piloting. Didn't I just kill the divine bull blood demon with my final spark? Lu Qianhuan was not convinced. That's because the blood demon is too big, so it's not easy to miss, right? And Lin replied. Lu Qianhuan. Right at this moment, a figure in a flowing white dress appeared above the Starfire battleship. The beautiful and aloof Bai Ling appeared at the top of the battleship with a smile on her face. I thought about it and decided to help you. You won't blame me for causing trouble for you, will you? Of course not. You came at the perfect time. And Lin was extremely excited. Su Xiaolan pursed her lips and glared at An Lin upon hearing this. Whoosh! A streak of crimson light suddenly closed in on An Lin. Look out! Su Xiaolan let loose a cry of surprise. An Lin turned around to discover that Emperor Yi Deng had already appeared before him. The power of the Azura blood Dao converged on his fist as he hurtled toward An Lin at an extremely fast speed. It was also at this moment. A handsome young man in a black robe appeared before An Lin. Analyze block. He extended a hand toward Emperor Yi Deng, and the black power of the divine Dao materialized in his palm like a crystalline barrier. Bam! Space crumbled. The power of the Azura blood Dao imbued within Emperor Yi Deng's fist exploded violently before surging into the young man's palm, as if it had struck a sponge. The young man borrowed the power of the Azura blood Dao to retreat for over 10 kilometers before turning to An Lin with a smile on his face. Master, you have to focus when you're fighting. Chapter 1410. An Lin stared at the handsome youth before him with a dazed expression. Xiaozhe. You're all here. He was a little touched. All of them are at least returned to Void final stage mighty figures. Don't worry, they won't hold you back. A confident smile appeared on Xiaozhe's face. During the battle in the ancient Tai Chu Dragon Realm, he had witnessed the destruction and restoration of the world, thereby allowing him to attain a deeper understanding of the divine Dao and become more and more proficient in the Dao of defense. Now, he could even defend himself against a Dao integration stage mighty figure. Now, another return to Void stage mighty figure had appeared out of thin air. Emperor Yi Deng felt as if he had been dragged down to a lower level. How could one or two return to Void stage mighty figures be able to hold their own against him? Was he still a Dao integration stage super mighty figure? Emperor Yi Deng's eyes burned with rage, and he stepped into the air before speaking in a low voice. Divine Dao Silence Formation, activate. Crimson veined patterns suddenly appeared on the surface of the immortal spirit paradise. They intertwined and intertwined to form an extremely massive spell formation. The spell formation was extremely ancient, but it also seemed to have existed for an eternity. A crimson light dyed heaven and earth crimson. This was an ancient spell formation left behind by the Blood Patriarch in the immortal spirit paradise. It was also a spell formation that even the emperors of the celestial court were extremely wary of. It had the ability to seal away the power of the divine Dao from all living beings other than the blood tribe. A boundlessly mighty projection of the Blood Patriarch over 100,000 feet tall suddenly appeared in the air above the immortal spirit paradise. It looked down upon all living beings before making a grabbing motion. Whoosh! Red ripples enshrouded heaven and earth. In that instant, both Xiao Zhe and Bai Ling felt as if they had lost the ability to sense their divine Tao. It was as if everything was just a dream. I've activated the spell formation left behind by the Blood Patriarch. You can't even use the power of the divine Tao now, so how are you going to fight me? A cruel smile appeared on Emperor Yi Deng's face. He didn't want to fight any longer, so he activated the most powerful spell formation in order to destroy all of his enemies as quickly as possible. This spell formation is not simple. Bai Ling stood atop the Starfire battleship with a grave expression. Boom, boom, boom. All of a sudden, a few black dots rapidly approached from the distance. They were imbued with extreme kinetic energy, and it was as if they were going to sink the entire continent. The space in their wake twisted, and they reached Emperor Yi Deng in the blink of an eye. They were several enormous metal balls. Emperor Yi Deng's pupils contracted, and he immediately extended a hand toward the metal ball. Rumble! The shockwave from the collision swept out for tens of thousands of meters. Emperor Yi Deng felt as if his hand had been torn apart, and an enormous power surged toward him like an avalanche. The space around him was completely unable to withstand this terrifying power, and it began to crumble like a spiderweb. That was not the end. Just when he managed to stabilize his strength, the metal balls behind him hit the butt of the metal ball in front of him like a skewer of candied haws. Layers upon layers of enormous forces stacked on top of each other. How terrifying was the power they formed! Yi Deng couldn't help but let out a blood-curdling scream as his body was sent flying by the metal ball, crashing into an immortal mountain behind him along with the ball. Rumble! The collision shook heaven and earth. Smoke and dust filled the air as rocks swirled in the air. Emperor Yi Deng. Ada's eyes widened as she let loose a cry of surprise. Emperor Yi Deng had confidently summoned the Blood Patriarch formation, only to be blasted flying by the Starfire battleship in the next instant. All of the Blood Tribe powerful beings were dumbstruck by this scene. Was this still the high and mighty Emperor, who ruled over an entire realm in their hearts? Why was he defeated just like that? In contrast, the white-robed man standing in midair with his hands clasped behind his back was completely expressionless, as if everything was under his control. He looked more like the leader of the Blood Tribe. Look at the fervor and ferocity of the holy worshippers, look at the invincible power of the holy leader's steed. Even the 3 holy disciples seemed to be subordinates of the holy leader. Could it be that Enlin really was the future hope of the Blood Tribe? It was no wonder that the other Blood Tribe powerful beings would think this way. Everything that had just happened was far too astonishing. The higher-ups of the Blood Tribe had all rebelled, and the holy leader had appeared out of nowhere just to save the 3 holy disciples. Furthermore, he had displayed his invincible power. Everything that had just transpired was far too astonishing. Enlin, aren't you going to enter the Blood Tribe Holy Land? Leave this to us. Hurry up and go in. Lu Qianhuan's pleasant voice sounded, and the main cannons on the Starfire battleship twisted and turned as if they were showing off their might. The Divine Tao Silence formation can only seal the power of the Divine Tao, but my Starfire battleship doesn't need the power of the Divine Tao. Ha ha! Lu Qianhuan's triumphant laughter erupted into the heavens. It had been a long time since she had been this bad *SS. Enlin could almost envision Lu Qianhuan laughing with her hands on her hips in the Starfire battleship's control room. All right, I'll leave Emperor Yi Deng to you. Enlin nodded heavily. He knew that the arrival of the Starfire battleship had solved Emperor Yi Deng's problem. He could take this opportunity to enter the Blood Tribe Holy Land. A crimson power of the Divine Tao erupted into the sky from beneath the crumbling mountain. Emperor Yi Deng emerged from the rubble like a fiend celestial. His skin was as red as blood, and a violent blood aura enshrouded a radius of several dozen kilometers as his aura swelled explosively. He was enraged, and his Azura blood Tao was unleashed to its fullest extent. Enlin's brows furrowed slightly. The current Yi Deng was even more powerful than the one he had faced in the past. Don't even think about escaping from me. All of you will die here. Yi Deng roared as he took a step forward, and he instantly appeared before Enlin at a speed that almost no one could see clearly before unleashing a fist. Enlin instantly understood that even at his current triple buff state, there was no way he would be able to block Emperor Yi Deng's fist. There was no other way. He heaved an internal sigh as a divine halo suddenly appeared above his head. It was as if there was an endless stream of white wind around him. The paramount power of divinity proliferated forth, and the surroundings seemed to have fallen silent. It was as if Enlin were the only person left between heaven and earth. In that instant, a hint of fear welled up in Emperor Yi Deng's heart. He was so scared that he wanted to withdraw his fist, as if punching Enlin was an extremely disrespectful thing to do. However, he quickly repressed this thought and continued to unleash his fist. Enlin's expression was already devoid of fear, and a faint smile appeared on his face. Heavenly wind, wind of absolute power. Emperor Yi Deng's fist instantly landed on Enlin's head, and an extremely terrifying power erupted forth. Not taking into account other things, even a Tao integration stage super mighty figure would be severely wounded if they were to take this punch head-on. However, Yi Deng's fist didn't seem to land on Enlin's head. It was as if it had been separated by some invisible barrier, and his fist had struck nothing but air. Bam! Enlin's body flew through the air as if he had been struck. However, Yi Deng could see his handsome, smiling face. How could he be so handsome? So three-dimensional? No matter how handsome someone was, their face would be flattened even if their head didn't explode after taking this punch. Emperor Yi Deng was astonished. The bizarre scene before him had left him in a daze. Enlin understood that he had only managed to block Emperor Yi Deng's enraged attack by unleashing his heavenly wind power. The heavenly wind power was the true paramount power of heaven and earth, and it was severely restricted by heaven and earth in his hands. However, he was still able to use it for a short period of time, even though it was very taxing on his energy. Blocking a Tao integration stage attack was no problem at all. A smile appeared on Enlin's face, and he borrowed the power of Emperor Yi Deng's punch to fly back into the Crimson Palace. Emperor Yi Deng was just about to give chase when another earth-shattering boom erupted from behind him. Then, a bone-chilling cannon blast instantly engulfed his body. Chapter 1411. The Starfire battleship was keeping Emperor Yi Deng busy. Enlin flew all the way into the blood-colored palace. The Crimson Palace was reinforced by an extremely powerful formation, which allowed it to survive the aftermath of the battle. As soon as Enlin entered the hall, he saw a sparkling white jade statue and a realm gate that glowed with a faint golden light beside the statue. Is this the entrance to the holy land of the Blood Patriarch that Cassidy and the others mentioned? Enlin quickly rushed to the entrance and activated his divine sense. At the same time, he activated his divine inspection technique as a white light flashed across his eyes. A message began to appear. Blood Azura Ancient Battlefield, the ancient battlefield where the Blood Clan and the foreign races fought. The explanation was very brief, and it did not contain the information that Enlin needed. Could it be that I opened my eyes in the wrong way? Enlin muttered to himself. He closed his eyes for a moment before opening them again to look at the realm gate. A piece of information appeared in his mind. Only those with the blood progenitor's bloodline were qualified to pass through the divine soul restriction. A bloodline that he instinctively recognizes? Cassidy and Tobias bloodlines have all been acknowledged by the Blood Patriarch, so there shouldn't be any issues with my bloodline, right? Enlin's interest was piqued upon seeing this. He stretched out his hand and carefully inserted it into the realm gate, trying to see if there would be any obstacles. When his hand touched the Golden Realm gate, he felt as if he had plunged into the water. It was a cool and smooth feeling. And a vast, distant, and extremely comfortable voice suddenly came from within the restrictive spell. Holy shit! What's that sound? Unlin was shocked and instinctively withdrew his hand. When Unlin retracted his hand, the Golden Realm gate shook violently and a sound came from inside again. Phew! Awesome! A strong suction force actually sucked Unlin's hand, not letting him pull it away. Unlin's expression changed drastically, and he was just about to use the power of the heavenly Tao to break free. Suddenly, the realm gate was like a vortex, erupting with an extremely terrifying suction force. Space twisted and contracted, completely sucking his body inside. This was no longer a matter of whether he was allowed to enter or not. Even if he didn't want to enter, the door would still suck him in. He felt a strong sense of dizziness. Soon, Unlin's vision became clear again. In front of him was a light green sky that was dusky, and the ground was yellow and dark red sand. At first glance, it looked like a desert with special colors. "This is the holy land of the Blood Tribe?" Unlin murmured. He turned around and looked behind him. There was a door that was releasing a faint glow. It seemed like the landing this time was not random. The entrance and exit were fixed. Right behind the exit door, there was an extremely large exotic beast skull. It was very easy to locate the exit. "Next, I'll contact Cassidy." Unlin began to dial a voice transmission talisman. However, his attempt to contact Cassidy seemed to have been severed by a peculiar power, and he was unable to transmit any information to Cassidy and the others. Strange, I could have contacted them when I was on the rocket. Unlin was a little perplexed. Could it be that they had entered some kind of strange place again? He looked around at the vast expanse of land around him. The terrain was crisscrossed and fractured, and the remnants of spell techniques were still exuding terrifying energy fluctuations. He could also see all types of strange skeletons emerging from the yellow sand. It was deathly silent, bleak, and dangerous. This was a very large place, so large that Unlin didn't know where to start. There were countless directions and countless paths. If he chose the wrong direction, then he would really end up wandering too far away. What do I do? Unlin wore a distressed expression. Just as he was feeling a little perplexed, a spell technique suddenly appeared in his mind. I got it. Heaven and earth were suddenly reflected in Unlin's eyes, and invisible energy fluctuations proliferated outward with a radius of over 150 kilometers. Divine simulation technique. Once unleashed, it could be used to deduce the laws of heaven and earth. The vital energy flow of the Blood Tribe's holy land, the direction in which the dust was drifting, the insects on the ground, the airflow in the sky, and everything else could be seen. These things appeared very ordinary at first glance. There were no traces or clues, so they didn't mean anything. However, in the eyes of Unlin, who had used the divine simulation technique, every single particle had its own meaning of existence and the information it wanted to convey. Every living being that appeared here would unconsciously affect their surroundings. Every time they moved, they would leave behind traces in the world. When everything in this world was pieced together, there would be a clear clue. He could deduce the past from the traces in the present, thereby predicting the future. Unlin closed his eyes again. When he opened them again, his pupils had already become black and white. He silently swallowed 2 immortal pills to recover his energy. Only then did he rise into the air and fly in a certain direction. The direction he flew in was the direction that Cassidy and the others were most likely to appear. At the same time, it was also the direction that Emperor and Mang had gone after entering this place. The vast expanse of land was still a vast expanse of white. As he advanced, the sky gradually turned from green to purple, and the Yin energy in the air became denser. The temperature dropped. There were even black snowflakes drifting down from the sky. Ding-ling-ling, ding-ling-ling, the crisp sound of a bell suddenly erupted from the ground nearby. Unlin's curiosity was piqued, and he lowered his altitude before looking toward the source of the sound. He discovered a red-robed skeleton sitting and leaning against a dead tree. Its head was tilted to one side, and if one ignored the flashing red light on its chest, they would be able to see that it was just a normal skeleton. That was interesting, and Lin also saw that the skeleton was holding a bell in its hand. Ding-ling-ling, ding-ling-ling. The skeleton seemed to have detected Lin's arrival, and it shook the bell with its 5 bony fingers. "Are you summoning me?" Lin asked with an uncertain expression. He made his way over to the skeleton, but his hand only touched thin air. Ding-ling-ling, ding-ling-ling. The sound erupted from another place. Lin discovered that the skeleton and the dead tree in front of him had all mysteriously disappeared. Then, they suddenly appeared in another place hundreds of meters away, and continued to ring the bells. An illusion? No. How could there be such realistic illusions in this world? Even my divine sense is unable to detect them. Lin was astonished. One had to realize that he had just released his divine sense, and he could sense that the skeleton was real and not an illusion. If it was really an illusion, then how high was the cultivation of the other party who created the illusion? Lin was a little unconvinced, and he continued to fly toward the skeleton. However, he had only just reached it when the skeleton became illusionary again. Ding-ling-ling, ding-ling-ling. The ringing of the bell seemed to be mocking Lin for overestimating himself. The red-robed skeleton didn't know how to do anything other than ringing the bell incessantly. Lin chuckled coldly. No wonder such an eye-catching monster is still able to seduce outsiders here after so long. Interesting, looks like Cassidy and Emperor and Mang have also seen it, but none of them could do anything to it. Lin's interest was piqued, and he made his way toward the red-robed skeleton as a white light flashed through his eyes. Divine Inspection Technique. Chapter 14:12. The Divine Inspection Technique could analyze and see through everything in this world. Whether it was in battle or identifying things, the Divine Inspection Technique was very convenient. As expected, nothing could hide from the Divine Inspection Technique. Lin used the Divine Inspection Technique to look at the red-robed skeleton. A string of information began to appear in his mind. Blood Patriarch's body. The body of the Blood Patriarch left behind in the Blood Azura ancient battlefield after his death. It has now become a spirit, and if you want to lure it out, you need to use extremely fresh blood as a guide. Lin's expression darkened upon seeing this information. As expected of the Blood Patriarch, a dead person's body could become a spirit. Did the Blood Patriarch know that his body was still alive? Also, what was the point of using blood to lure it out? This thing sucked blood? Lin was a bit skeptical, but he silently slit his wrist, and some blood flowed out. The smell of blood spread. The red-robed skeleton was still leaning against the dead tree, shaking its bell. Its body suddenly trembled, and its empty eyes lit up. Howl! The skeleton let out a strange cry, and its body turned into a blur as it pounced toward Lin at a speed that even Lin couldn't keep up with. It licked Lin's wrist. How could a skeleton lick without a tongue? Lin was shocked to discover that after the skeleton opened its mouth, a small pink tongue materialized in its mouth, and it licked his wrist. Slurp! My God! This is the perfect blood that I've been dreaming of. It smells so good. The skeleton yelled excitedly. Lin was very familiar with that voice. It seemed to be the same voice that sounded when entering the Holy Land. Lin was slightly taken aback, but he immediately came to his senses. At the same time, he quickly grabbed onto the skeleton's neck and unleashed an extremely powerful spatial seal. Boom! Lin grabbed onto the skeleton monster's neck and slammed it into the ground, pinning it firmly against the ground. Ah! Let me go! The skeleton struggled violently. Lin held onto the skeleton's neck with a death grip and sneered. Keep shaking your bell. Weren't you very excited just now? Keep going. The skeleton monster. Lin finally understood. Although the skeleton monster in front of him had impressive illusory means, after it turned into a solid body, it only had a fast speed and did not have much combat power. Perhaps because it had been pressed down for too long, the red-robed skeleton monster roared angrily, "Foolish ant, hurry up and release me. Do you know who I am? Don't force me to take action." And Lin couldn't be bothered with it and continued to strip the red-robed skeleton monster's clothes. Sure enough, he saw a skeleton that looked exquisite and perfect like a work of art. In the gloomy sky, it still glowed with a sparkling white luster. At the location of the skeleton's heart, there was a ball of red light flashing, just like a beating heart. It looked very special. "Oh, this thing of yours is quite unique. You're already dead, yet you still want to add a heart?" And Lin chuckled as he reached out to grab the heart. "No. Don't." The skeleton monster screamed and struggled frantically on the ground. "Heh heh heh. Shout all you want. Anyway, no one will come to save you even if you shout yourself hoarse." And Lin's face was filled with excitement and eagerness. "Also, the more you resist, the more excited I get," the skeleton monster was forced to cry, but it could only watch helplessly as Lin's hand reached for its heart. As the large hand approached, the ball of red light at the location of the heart became even more intense. At the same time, an extremely terrifying backlash force began to surge toward Lin's hand. Lin was shocked and was just about to unleash his power to resist, but the backlash force suddenly paused when it approached his hand. Then, as if it had discovered something extremely shocking, it pounced toward Lin's wrist and fiercely licked it. "Oh! Ah!" A blush appeared on the skeleton monster's skull, and it seemed to be extremely enjoying it as it let out a carefree cry. Lin was shocked to discover that the blood from the wound on his wrist was being transported to the location of the heart by that energy. The red-robed skeleton monster's naked body no longer struggled. It was as if licking blood with its tongue and licking blood with its heart were two completely different things. Now it was even more comfortable and intoxicated. So comfortable, so high. I feel like I've reached the climax of my life. I feel like I've reached the pinnacle of my life. So dazzling, so dazzling. Lin. He thought that his blood was like an aphrodisiac to some blood tribe mighty figures. However, never would he have thought that his blood could also have an aphrodisiac effect on a dead blood tribe skeleton. The skeleton monster grabbed onto Lin with an excited expression. "Great living being, you are the true essence of the Tao of blood that I've been searching for countless years. Let me follow you. I'm very easy to raise. I only need a drop of blood every day. A drop of blood will do. Can I?" Lin was stunned. What was going on with this seemingly familiar plot? "You're just a dead corpse, can you have some dignity? Don't follow a stranger for no reason." Lin roared angrily. "I didn't follow you for no reason. I've thought about it carefully, you know. I've waited for countless years and met 8 holy disciples, but I didn't like any of them. Only you, only your blood has convinced me." The skeleton monster was excited. Lin's lips twitched. "So you, the blood patriarch, want to follow me?" The skeleton monster immediately replied, "I wanted you to follow me, but I can't beat you. Also, there's no way that someone with such perfect blood would follow me. So, let me follow you." Lin nodded slightly. He was very satisfied that the skeleton monster knew what it was doing. Now that he had resolved this fundamental conflict, the rest of the conversation was much easier to discuss. It was impossible for him not to be tempted by the corpse of the blood patriarch. Although this corpse didn't seem to be of much use at the moment, he could slowly train and develop it in the future. "So, how do you plan to follow me? Sign a slave contract?" Lin asked. "I can't sign a slave contract because I'm not a complete living being yet. I'm like a weapon that hasn't given birth to a spirit but has a consciousness. You can use me as a weapon and refine me, and I'll recognize you as my master," the skeleton monster said. And Lin nodded slightly and made a hand seal according to the weapon refining procedure. He activated a cultivation technique and released the blood essence in his hand toward the skeleton monster's head. The skeleton monster's expression was scorching, and it wanted to lick the blood essence. Luckily, Lin was prepared and immediately used the greater suppression technique. The skeleton monster howled in pain, and Lin sneered. "Do you think I wouldn't be on guard against blood addicts like you? Hurry up and accept my blood essence." Time and time again, Lin was already very familiar with this procedure, so the skeleton monster couldn't take advantage of him. Soon, an indistinct connection was forged between Lin and the skeleton monster. Thus, the skeleton monster finally became a special weapon for Lin. Chapter 14:13. Haha, it feels very impressive to be able to make the Blood Patriarch my weapon. Lin was a little smug. The skeleton monster chuckled. "Master, I'm only the body of the Blood Patriarch. To put it more accurately, I have little to do with the Blood Patriarch. The real Blood Patriarch died a long time ago. I am me, not the Blood Patriarch." Lin was not disappointed to hear this. "Then who are you? What should I call you?" "I don't have a name yet, Master." The skeleton monster scratched its head. "I see." A thoughtful expression appeared on Lin's face. "Then I'll give you a name." Sure. The skeleton monster's expression was one of anticipation. Lin looked at the pristine, white skeleton in the red robe. "You are the manifestation of the Blood Patriarch's body, so you are the most precious body in this world. You also cultivate in the great Tao of blood, allowing you to observe life and death as well as observe yin and yang. Sooner or later, you will be able to shake the world." The skeleton monster's breathing accelerated with excitement as it nodded incessantly. "How about I call you Shui Meng Meng?" Lin clapped his hands together and made the final decision. The skeleton monster. "Shui Meng Meng? What the hell is that?" The skeleton monster was unable to react for a moment, and its mouth gaped open as it stared at Lin with a dumbstruck expression. "What is it? Is there a problem?" Lin was curious. Shui Zhantian's little brother was named Shui Meng Meng, and he had thought that was a good name. Now that the Blood Tribe corpse was named Shui Meng Meng, it was a dream come true for him. "I just don't understand what I have to do with being cute." The skeleton monster cocked its head to the side. Lin stroked the skeleton monster's smooth skull with a smile. "No, you're actually very cute. You just haven't realized it yet." "I see." The skeleton monster nodded with an enlightened expression, and its body creaked as it squatted down and made a heart gesture to Lin. "Then I'll be called Shui Meng Meng from now on, Master." Lin's lips twitched at the sight of this soul-stirring scene. "You sure are quick to adapt. Isn't it cute?" Cute. After taking care of Shui Meng Meng, Lin continued to search for traces of Cassidy and the others. The only convenient thing about Shui Meng Meng was that it could be placed directly into a storage ring, just like the vermilion bird mirror. Shui Meng Meng was very curious about Lin, and it asked him about this and that. It asked him about how he cultivated the Tao of blood, how he was able to cultivate his blood to such perfection, who his master was, and what his plans were for the future. The questions were endless, and Lin was annoyed by them. He directly asked Shui Meng Meng if it could fight, and how much its combat power was worth. Shui Meng Meng said that its body was still unstable, so it couldn't fight yet. Lin said, "Okay." Then, he directly stored Shui Meng Meng into his storage ring. Their top priority right now was to save Cassidy, Tobias, and Merlin. They didn't have time to chat with Shui Meng Meng. "Oh no, even if I have time, I won't chat." Lin followed the clues he discovered using the divine simulation technique and continued advancing quickly. About 15 minutes later, a massive divine mountain appeared in his field of vision. The divine mountain was over 100,000 feet tall, and its peak had been sliced open by some kind of extremely sharp power. Not only that, but there were also a series of ghastly cracks on the mountain, and there were even crimson energy surging from some parts of the mountain. Unlin's heart jolted. That power was very familiar to him. I can only use the divine simulation technique once a month, so I can't force myself to use it again. The battle most likely took place not too long ago, so the clues should be very obvious. He hesitated momentarily before rising into the sky. Countless divine symbols appeared in his eyes. Omniscient Eye. The Omniscient Eye was one of the celestial Thearcha's ultimate technique. It allowed one to observe the heavens and observe the earth, thereby allowing one to see through all things. He couldn't use the divine simulation technique to search for clues, but he could still use the Omniscient Eye. There it is. Unlin turned and immediately set off in another direction. There was still time. Hopefully, there was still time on a vast expanse of yellow sand. A thin man with a pair of pitch-black eyes and long black hair trailing down his back was dragging 3 black coffins with ghostly faces engraved on them with metal chains as he slowly made his way forward. Even though he was making his way forward slowly, his speed was actually extremely fast. It was as if the ground had shrunk to an inch, and with every step he took, his body would traverse countless kilometers. "Stop right there!" A loud roar erupted from the distance. A pitch-black sword projection descended from the sky like a heavenly blade slicing through heaven and earth, and it slashed toward the man's head at an extremely fast speed. The man raised a hand and made a grabbing motion toward the sword projection. That shocking sword light was actually tightly held in his hand. Bam! The sword projection was crushed by the man's brute force, and it transformed into countless energy fragments that dissipated into the air. "You're the one who barged into my tribe's holy land?" The man raised his head, and his pupils contracted slightly upon seeing the white-robed young man's face. "It's you, Unlin?" Unlin descended to the ground and stared intently at the 3 coffins behind the man as a powerful killing intent erupted from his body. "What did you do to Cassidy and the others?" The man didn't answer. Instead, he stared at Unlin with his inky black eyes as he murmured to himself. The sect leader of the 4-9 Immortal sect was acknowledged by the Blood Patriarch and entered the Holy Land. "So you're the holy leader they're talking about? Interesting, how interesting. To think that something like this could happen in this world." Boom! Heaven and earth suddenly fell into a vast expanse of darkness. Divine Tool Domain. Unlin abruptly charged toward the man, and his sword fell like lightning. The man's expression remained unchanged as he raised a hand to block Unlin's sword again. The angle of the sword was extremely precise, and his fingers clamped tightly onto the blade of Unlin's sword. A terrifying power flowed from his fingers, and he was able to keep Unlin's sword at bay. "I'm asking you, what did you do to Cassidy and the others?" Unlin gritted his teeth. "They're already dead." A smile appeared on the man's face. Unlin took a deep breath as a cold expression appeared on his face. "If that's the case, then you can go and accompany them. Vanquish the heavens and slay all evil, annihilation." Bam! Blood splattered through the air. The man's head suddenly exploded and was annihilated into the tiniest particles. Unlin's rage was completely unquenchable, and he didn't mind using his trump card right from the get-go to kill this man. He was just about to withdraw his sword when he discovered that the evil-slaying sword was still clamped tightly between the man's fingers, and there was no sign of him letting go. Unlin stared at the man before him with astonishment on his face. The blood on the man's decapitated body wriggled incessantly before quickly disintegrating to form another head. A smile appeared on the man's face. "As expected of the holy leader. You are indeed very powerful. However, you don't seem to know who I am. Otherwise, you wouldn't have the courage to attack me." Boom! The space around the man began to collapse as darkness sucked in everything. Unlin looked at the man before him, and he felt as if he had seen a boundless abyss of darkness and nothingness, guiding all living beings to oblivion and death. "I, Emperor Enmang, am renowned as the most powerful holy disciple in the history of the Blood Tribe. I rule over absolute life and death. What right do you have to oppose me? Emperor and Mang stepped forward, and a divine black light erupted into the sky, breaking through Little Xie's divine tool domain in an extremely violent manner as he thrust a palm toward Enlin. Chapter 14:14. Emperor and Mang's palm, imbued with the true intent of annihilation, instantly proliferated for over 50 kilometers. Enlin could sense an even more terrifying power than when he was battling Emperor Yi Deng. Almost without any hesitation, he immediately used the evading turtle technique. A green light erupted as a tough shell materialized over his body, presenting him with an extremely awe-inspiring sight. At the same time, Emperor and Mang's palm, imbued with the power of the divine Tao, had already landed on Enlin's turtle shell. Bam! A dull thump erupted. The palm collided with the turtle shell, and the divine Tao light of darkness invaded the turtle shell in a frenzy. Enlin's most powerful defense, the evading turtle technique, was riddled with cracks. F***ck off. Enlin borrowed on the turtle shell to quickly retreat. Emperor and Mang didn't think that Enlin would be able to withstand his palm, and he was a little surprised. However, he didn't hesitate to press on with his attack as he unleashed two black chains from his arms, which pierced through space. The chains were like spears that hurtled toward Enlin's shoulders. The turtle shell, which had already been cracked open by the palm, finally began to shatter after being struck by the extremely powerful chains. This was also the first time that Enlin's evading turtle technique had been shattered so violently. Emperor and Mang wore a cold expression as he interlaced his fingers, upon which a black ball appeared in his palm, exuding a terrifying power of annihilation. Cycle of life and death, the dead are eternal. He pushed his hands forward, and the black ball flew through the air. It's over, infinite reincarnation tribulation. Enlin sensed an extremely dangerous aura as soon as the ball flew through the air. He immediately unleashed his heavenly wind power, and a divine halo appeared above his head. Wind of absolute power. Boom! The black ball exploded with a resounding boom. Boundless darkness instantly engulfed heaven and earth, sucking away all things in this world. The more tribulations accumulated, the more destructive they would be. After accumulating countless tribulations, they could even destroy karma and return the universe to chaos. Even though Emperor and Mang couldn't do this, he had already carved out his own path. The endless eons of tribulation turned into the most despairing darkness, devouring and destroying everything. Enlin looked at darkness, which could even devour light, and his expression changed drastically. What Emperor and Mang had just tossed out wasn't a spell technique, it was a King black hole. Boundless devouring and destructive power tore at his body in a frenzy. The earth had already been stripped and devoured, turning into nothingness. The sky also began to collapse, the void shattered, and the atmosphere disappeared. The black hole instantly engulfed Enlin's figure, and then crazily expanded to a radius of 10 li, a radius of 100 li, a radius of 200 li, a radius of 400 li. It was like an apocalyptic calamity that wanted to devour everything cleanly. However, in the end, Emperor and Mang's body swayed slightly, as if he were unable to hold on any longer. With great difficulty, he formed a hand seal, shouted, and took the initiative to withdraw the spell. The darkness that could devour all things began to shrink, returning to its origin and disappearing. Even a lion will use its full strength to capture a rabbit. I will not underestimate any enemy. Emperor and Mang stood in midair and looked down at the empty space around him. The earth had already been reduced to a bottomless abyss, and the sky had already collapsed and shattered. A series of spatial rifts and destructive power were still surging through the air, further illustrating just how terrifying that scene had been. Enlin, you have the right to be my enemy. Hence, dying to my most powerful spell technique, immeasurable reincarnation tribulation, is not a waste of your cultivation base. Emperor and Mang's features were a little pale, and he was just about to continue onward with the coffin. All of a sudden, His expression shifted drastically, and he tried to retreat. Heavenly blade! A clear cry erupted from the distance. A thin white line sliced through the air, hurtling toward Emperor and Mang at an extremely terrifying speed. Emperor and Mang was greeted by the sight of the white-robed Unlin emerging from the abyss, completely unscathed. He immediately thrust a hand toward the thin white line while gripping the air with his other hand. Immeasurable reincarnation tribulation. Again? Unlin's pupils contracted in shock. However, the absolute defense of his wind of absolute power was still maintained, so he wasn't afraid of Emperor and Mang's attack. A wisp of white light erupted from chaos before abruptly stabbing toward Unlin's chest. What? It wasn't a black hole? Unlin's heart jolted with shock as a searing pain erupted from his chest. The wisp of white light had pierced through his heavenly wind-powered defense and punctured his chest. Bam! Blood mist sprayed forth. Unlin stared down at his chest with incredulity on his face. Right at this moment, the heavenly blade had also sliced Emperor and Mang's arm and body cleanly in half. What? How could it be so sharp? Emperor and Mang was also staring at Unlin with incredulity on his face as the two halves of his body plummeted from the sky. Unlin swallowed 2 immortal pills before activating his evergreen technique to heal the wound on his chest. I get it now. The immeasurable reincarnation tribulation not only brings about the destruction of darkness, but it also brings about the rebirth of everything after the destruction. No wonder it's called the immeasurable reincarnation. That wisp of white light was the power of life that could split heaven and earth apart. In the next instant, Emperor and Mang's 2 halves of his body also approached each other before fusing back together. Unlin wasn't surprised to see this. Emperor and Mang's life force was simply far too powerful. He could even regrow his head after it was blown off, so it was within expectations that he would be fused back together after being sliced in half. The life force of the blood tribe really is troublesome. Unlin heaved a faint sigh. Emperor and Mang stared intently at Unlin with his inky black eyes. What was that power you used just then? It was the power of the primordial world, Unlin replied with a buoyant smile. The power of the primordial world? Emperor and Mang's expression became grave. It sounded very powerful. To think that you possess such an unfathomable power. No wonder the 3 holy disciples are so loyal to you. Killing intent welled up in Emperor and Mang's heart again. A faint smile appeared on Unlin's face. I didn't subdue them through power. Then what is it? Emperor and Mang asked. In the past, with his personality, there was no way he would waste so much time talking to Unlin. He would simply kill him with absolute power. However, after Unlin displayed a series of incredible powers, he was beginning to become curious about everything about Unlin. Unlin extracted a drop of blood from the wound on his chest that had yet to fully recover. That's what I'm relying on. Do you want to try it? Unlin felt like he wouldn't be able to win if he were to fight Emperor and Mang to the bitter end. He had unleashed a series of high-intensity spell techniques and even the power of the heavenly gods a few times, so his energy was almost completely depleted. Even though he had a large number of immortal pills to replenish his energy, he was still no match for Emperor and Mang in terms of condition. He had to think of some other way to win this battle. Emperor and Mang faltered slightly at the sight of the blood hovering on Unlin's fingertip before bursting into laughter. Are you kidding me? You're telling me you used your blood to make them loyal to you? Is there anyone in this world who knows more about blood than the blood tribe? Why do you think Cassidy and the other 2 received the acknowledgement of the blood patriarch at the same time? Unlin asked. Some things could already be said to this extent. The rest could only be explained by imagination. Emperor and Mang's heart stirred. He was very perplexed about the 3 holy disciples appearing at the same time, but Unlin's words seemed to have cleared up the cloud of doubt in his mind. Could it be that it really was because of his blood? Emperor and Mang's heart trembled as he looked at the blood on Unlin's fingertip, and he began to hesitate. Unlin's blood. Should he accept it or not? Chapter 14-15. At this moment, the atmosphere became a little stiff. Emperor Meng's heart was stirring. Lin wore a nonchalant expression as he silently recovered his energy, occasionally glancing at the coffin on Emperor Meng's back. The coffin was most likely capable of isolating itself from the outside world, but his divine sense was unable to penetrate it. However, he had a feeling that Cassidy and the others were in the coffin, even though he didn't know whether they were dead or alive. Hopefully, they weren't. Otherwise, he didn't dare to say what he would do to the Blood Tribe Emperors. Another minute passed. And Lin couldn't help but chuckle. What? You're a mighty Blood Tribe Emperor, but you're afraid of even a drop of my blood? Humph. Emperor Meng harumphed coldly before making a grabbing motion, upon which a burst of spatial suction force erupted. And Lin didn't move, but the drop of blood on his fingertip was already drifting toward Emperor Meng. If I can't even handle a drop of your blood, then how am I supposed to stand at the pinnacle of the Blood Tribe? Let me see what's in your blood. A determined expression appeared on Emperor Meng's face as he opened his mouth and swallowed Lin's blood. He had his own pride. As the most powerful holy disciple in history recognized by the Blood Patriarch, he was confident that his blood was the most precious and purest blood in this world. All other blood, no matter what it contained, would have to kneel before his blood and bow down to it. The Blood Tribe was extremely sensitive to blood. In the instant that a drop of blood entered their stomachs, they could sense its quality and essence, thereby allowing them to unleash the full potential of the blood. Emperor Meng was no exception. In the instant that he swallowed Lin's blood, he had already understood what Lin's blood was. His entire body then shuddered. My God! What kind of blood is this? Emperor Meng's eyes lit up, and a faint blush appeared on his fair and thin face. Impossible! How could there be such pure blood in this world? It's too perfect. I feel like the blood within my body has also been purified and elevated. Emperor Meng clutched his face with both hands as his eyes glazed over and clear. Lin heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed like his blood was still as awesome as ever to the Blood Clan. It was like a nuclear weapon. How could you have such perfect blood? Emperor Meng swallowed incessantly as he stared at Lin with a scorching light in his eyes. Me? I was born with it. Lin shrugged and smiled. No, that's impossible. Emperor Meng shook his head relentlessly. This is definitely not the blood of a living being. You're not a human. Lin's mouth twitched. Why are you scolding me? Dissatisfied, he took out another drop of blood from his chest and said with a smile, Do you still want to lick my blood? Emperor Meng shuddered, and his breathing accelerated as he stared at the blood on Lin's fingertip. He was like a starving dog that had just seen a piece of juicy meat. My blood is the most noble blood in the world. How could it be subdued by your blood? Don't joke around. Just tell me, do you want to lick it? Yes, Emperor Meng's eyes were bloodshot, and a conflicted expression appeared on his face. Lin pointed to himself. If you establish a slave contract with me, I can consider rewarding you with a few mouthfuls of my blood when I'm in a good mood. Slave contract? Emperor Meng's eyes widened with rage. You want me to become your slave? Lin nodded. That's right. Ha ha. Emperor Meng chortled like a madman. You want me, Emperor Meng, to become your slave? You're a lunatic. I, Meng, am the ruler of an entire realm, and I'm powerful enough to shake the entire Tai Chu continent. Even if I die on the spot, suffer 10,000 tortures, and die 1,000,000 times, I still won't give in and become your servant. Dream on. Emperor Meng roared as if he had lost his mind. His eyes were burning with desire as he stared at the blood on Lin's fingertip. However, his soul was resisting with all its might. His pride wouldn't allow him to do this. Lin couldn't bear to see Emperor Meng struggling and in pain, and he made another cut on his own body, blood flowed freely before converging in front of him. If you agree to become my servant, then this blood gift bag is yours. Unlin smiled faintly, and his expression was extremely generous. Boom! Emperor and Mang felt as if he had been dealt a blow over 10,000 times over in that instant, and he was completely dumbstruck as he stared blankly at the large ball of blood in front of Unlin. What a huge amount of HP! What a huge gift! He was panting heavily, and he swallowed relentlessly. What would it be like to drink so much blood in one go? It would be so satisfying, right? I want it. Give it to me. Emperor and Mang couldn't hold back any longer. His body's desire finally overcame his rationality, and he pounced directly toward Unlin. Unlin spread open his wings of wind and fled into the distance as he yelled, "Oi! This blood can only be given to you after you become my servant." Slave? Alright. I'll become your slave. Emperor and Mang was extremely excited. So what if he could become a slave with such perfect blood? To be able to drink such perfect blood every day, this was the life a high-ranking blood breed should have. Emperor and Mang agreed without any hesitation as he stared at Unlin with a scorching light in his eyes. Unlin immediately made a hand seal and released his blood essence. Hurry up and accept it. Emperor and Mang was about to wholeheartedly accept the blood essence that was flying toward him. All of a sudden, his body faltered, and his eyes gradually became clear again. No. I am the future of the blood tribe. I am the holy disciple appointed by the blood patriarch. I can't become someone else's slave. I can't betray them. I can't betray them. Emperor and Mang roared as blood gushed forth from his mouth. He had bitten off his own tongue with his teeth. The pain allowed him to regain some clarity of mind, and in the battle between his body and his rationality gradually prevailed. Unlin was starting to admire Emperor and Mang. There had never been a blood tribe cultivator who could resist the temptation of his blood after tasting it. Emperor and Mang was the first. Perhaps this was his pride as the #1 holy disciple of the blood patriarch? Unlin thought about it for a moment before making another cut on his arm. This is a double discount for a servant package. What are you waiting for? Emperor and Mang felt as if he had been dealt a heavy blow, and the faint scent of blood made his eyes glaze over again. Ah! You demon! You're a demon! Emperor and Mang had never been in such a state before, and he roared. Then, an astonishing scene unfolded before Unlin's eyes. Emperor and Mang immediately turned and fled. He had even used a mystic technique that allowed him to burn his blood to accelerate himself. That's right, the best way to avoid the temptation of Unlin's blood was to not look at it or smell it. Out of sight, out of mind. Unlin stared blankly at Emperor and Mang's rapidly disappearing figure. He ran away just like that? He had thought that Emperor and Mang would fight to the death, and he had also thought that Emperor and Mang would surrender. However, never would he have thought that Emperor and Mang would choose to flee, using his blood to force an extremely powerful Tao integration stage super mighty figure into retreat was quite an accomplishment. Unlin then looked at the 3 coffins that were still hovering in midair, and fell into deep thought again. Emperor and Mang had fled without even taking his coffins with him? Was his blood that terrifying? Chapter 14:16. Unlin faltered on the spot for a few seconds before flying toward the 3 hovering coffins. It appeared that Emperor and Mang really had been severely traumatized. Otherwise, he wouldn't have left such an important coffin here and fled without even bothering to put it away. Unlin made his way over to the 3 black coffins and tried to open them. However, the coffin lids were stuck to the coffins as if they were a part of the coffin, and he couldn't move them at all. Unlin had no choice but to use his divine inspection technique again. A string of information appeared in his mind. Soul-perishing coffin. A coffin imbued with Emperor and Mang's power of the divine Tao. This is an intermediate-rank immortal tool that can seal away all of the living beings' powers and force them into a deep slumber. The most convenient way to open the coffin was to awaken the living being within the coffin with its favorite object, upon which the soul-perishing coffin would open automatically. And Lin was ecstatic upon seeing this information. Coffins were used for sealing, not for burying, which meant that Cassidy and the others were still alive. As for the favorite object of the living being within the coffin? And Lin silently flicked the 3 drops of blood onto the surface of the coffin lid. He wasn't being narcissistic, but no blood tribe cultivator could resist the allure of his blood. Sure enough, boom boom boom, 3 resounding booms erupted. Cassidy, Tobias, and Merlin all rose to their feet with scorching expressions on their faces. Blood. Super delicious blood. It's a delightful aroma. This is my pursuit and the value of my life. The seductively beautiful Cassidy, the burly Tobias, and the handsome Merlin flew out and licked the blood off the coffin lid without any hesitation. And Lin, I went to great lengths to get you out of here, and you're going to suck up to me without even informing me first? And Lin instantly wiped the blood off the coffin with a disdainful expression. The properties of the new blood were still unknown, so he couldn't give it to them for now. Cassidy's slender body shuddered as she turned her head to look at Lin. There was a look of astonishment on her beautiful face, and she seemed to have just come to her senses. Soon, her seductive red eyes were filled with tears. Master! She threw herself at Lin and hugged him tightly. Burying her head in his chest, she burst into tears. I thought I would never see you again. I didn't think that you would really come to save us. You even saved us successfully. Sob, sob, sob. The 4 emperors of the blood tribe have all been mobilized. I didn't expect you to come to our rescue without any hesitation. I can only imagine how many trials and tribulations you've endured. You're the best master in this world. Merlin was also wiping tears from his eyes. He felt like it was a great thing to have such a good master. Even an army of 100,000 blood tribe soldiers and 4 blood tribe emperors couldn't stop the sacred ancestor. How domineering was this? How majestic and magnificent! It's the greatest honor of my life to be able to serve our sacred ancestor. Tobias didn't shed tears easily, but his face was covered in snot. And Lin couldn't stand this mushy scene any longer, and he hurriedly cut him off. All right, let's get out of this place first. Yes, sacred ancestor. Yes. Master. Cassidy was still clinging onto Lin's body, and her large breasts were rubbing against him. Lin swatted her aside. Don't try to take advantage of me. The 3 holy disciples followed behind Lin obediently as they made their way toward the exit of the blood tribe Holy Land. Sacred ancestor, how is Emperor Unmang? He was scared away by me. Gasp! The 3 holy disciples drew a sharp intake of breath. Sacred ancestor, we discovered the remains of the blood patriarch in the Holy Land. Do you want to try your luck and take it with you? Oh, is that what you're talking about? It has already accepted me as its master. And Lin pulled out Shuemengmeng. Gasp! The 3 holy disciples all drew a sharp intake of breath. As expected of the sacred ancestor. He's so bad *SS. I knew the sacred ancestor was omnipotent. I was right. Even the blood patriarch has become the sacred ancestor's servant. Who else in this world can stop the sacred ancestor? The 3 holy disciples exclaimed in admiration as they stared at the man in the flowing white robe with scorching light in their eyes. Shuemengmeng raised its head proudly. I am the remains of the blood patriarch, and my name is Shuemengmeng. Why don't you kneel down before me? Shuemengmeng. Cassidy was dumbstruck. Shuemengmeng. The red-robed skeleton spoke with an authoritative expression. Tobias couldn't help but burst into laughter. Ha ha ha! Merlin also couldn't help but burst into laughter. Cassidy repressed her laughter with difficulty. That's a good name. The blood patriarch, who had once reigned supreme over the entire world, was now referring to himself as Shuemengmeng, The 3 holy disciples couldn't help but burst into laughter upon seeing this. What's wrong? Is the name funny? Are you questioning my naming skills? Unlin glowered at the 3 holy disciples with an enraged expression. The 3 holy disciples immediately stopped laughing upon hearing that Unlin had come up with the name. Instead, they began to praise Xue Mengmeng with all their might, saying that it was a noble name that was filled with love. Xue Mengmeng's expression eased slightly, and it returned to Unlin's storage ring. Unlin had his own reasons for coming up with this name. Not only was it pleasing to the ear, but he was also calling it Mengmeng, to dispel the powerful killing intent emanating from the remains of the Blood Patriarch. Calling it Mengmeng over and over again would gradually purify its heart and fill it with love for this world. All right, I can't make it up anymore. Unlin, Cassidy, and the others arrived at the spatial gate of the Blood Patriarch's holy land without a hitch before hurriedly exiting. They were greeted by the sight of the Crimson Palace that had already been reduced to rubble. Only the spatial gate left behind by the Blood Ancestor was still standing. Everything else had turned into rubble on the ground. The Blood Patriarch's holy palace has been destroyed. Cassidy's expression shifted drastically. It was protected by an extremely powerful spell formation of the Tao integration stage. Who could have destroyed it in such a brutal manner? Tobias was also quite shocked. Unlin's expression was also quite grave. Not taking into account anything else, just the fact that the Crimson Palace had remained completely unscathed during his battle with Emperor Yi Deng was a testament to just how terrifyingly sturdy it was. Roar! An earth-shattering roar of fury suddenly erupted from nearby. The sound waves transformed into substantial energy that caused the ground within a radius of several dozen kilometers to tremor. Unlin raised his head and was greeted by the sight of a crimson god-fiend over 10,000 feet tall with 8 arms, each of which wielded a divine weapon. It was currently roaring in a frenzy. One of its arms was wielding a crimson saber, which it slashed toward the nearby Starfire battleship. The saber projection extended for over 50 kilometers, and it was imbued with boundless killing intent as it dyed the entire sky red. The saber projection was imbued with boundless killing intent, and it sliced through the Starfire battleship's protective barrier before tearing a massive gash into its hull. Chapter 14:17. What is this? Emperor Yi Deng? Unlin stared at the monster before him with astonishment on his face. It's over. Emperor Yi Deng has lost control. Merlin's expression shifted drastically. Unlin was still confused. Lost control. Cassidy explained, Emperor Yi Deng's power of the Divine Tao has always been unstable after his Tao integration stage. Once he loses control, he'll transform into a mindless infernal Rakshasa with nothing but slaughter in his heart. His power will increase explosively, and no one in the Blood Tribe is a match for him aside from Emperor Fu Tian. Unlin's lips twitched as he stared at the enraged monster. There are only 4 Blood Tribe emperors, and Yi Deng is only ranked 2nd despite being reduced to this state? He's already very strong. You should know that his usual strength is only ranked 4th among the great emperors, Cassidy said solemnly. Unlin. So it's last place. There are no weaklings among the unification of Tao. They are all supreme experts who have integrated their own Tao into the great Tao of heaven and earth and obtained the recognition of heaven and earth. Cassidy cautioned, Sacred Ancestor, you're very powerful, but don't underestimate your opponent. It's not wise for us to continue fighting. Let's hurry up and escape. Unlin nodded in agreement. Even Feng Weia, a rookie Tao integration stage super mighty figure who had only progressed to the Tao integration stage 10,000 years ago, had almost killed him. There really were no weaklings among the Tao integration stage. Right at this moment, the infernal Rakshasa roared as he pounced toward the Starfire battleship again. The Starfire battleship's cannons rumbled, blasting large holes into the infernal Shura's body. Blood and flesh splattered everywhere, but the infernal Shura was like a demon god that would never fall. He ignored the attacks and continued to swing his weapon at the Starfire battleship. It's over. This undead war god Cheyenne is a ruthless character who doesn't care about his life. Big Sister Bai Ling, let's get out of here, Lu Qianhuan urged anxiously. At this moment, the massive infernal Rakshasa arrived in front of the Starfire battleship again. He swung his 8 weapon-wielding arms in a frenzy, and one of his arms was wielding a massive crimson hammer, which tore through the energy barrier of the battleship before crashing into the hull of the battleship. Rumble! The thick deck of the battleship was once again smashed by the giant hammer. Ah! Lu Qianhuan wailed in pain. Now that she was one with the warship, she could feel the pain when the warship was damaged. At this moment, a spear pierced toward the Starfire battleship's main cannon at lightning speed. Bai Ling appeared in front of the cannon and pushed her hands forward. A white, twisted ball appeared in front of her as countless information flashed through her eyes. The terrifyingly powerful spear twisted and deflected after stabbing forward, changing its direction and stabbing into the ship's hull next to the main cannon, tearing out a gap of tens of thousands of meters in length. Wait a bit longer. We can't abandon Anlin. Bai Ling's features were already a little pale, but she still insisted. Sob, sob, sob. It hurts. It's not easy to be a ship girl. The Starfire battleship shuddered as if it were trembling and sobbing. The Starfire battleship was able to just barely keep Emperor Yi Deng at bay. However, Emperor Yi Deng was dealt a heavy blow when he saw Anlin enter the Blood Tribe Holy Land. The mighty Emperor of the Blood Tribe had activated the Blood Tribe formation, but he couldn't even block a return to Void Stage Cultivator? This was a huge humiliation. He was both humiliated and enraged, and he lost control of his emotions and went on a rampage. The Starfire battleship was completely no match for the enraged Emperor Yi Deng and was forced into retreat. Elsewhere, on the battlefield of the Blood Tribe, the battle was gradually drawing to a conclusion. The Blood Tribe cultivators on the Blood Tribe Emperor's side had either died, fled, or surrendered. There wasn't much left for them to fight. Tina was currently treating Su Xiaolan and Xiao Zhe's injuries. The other 2 Holy Golden Guardians had already been stowed away into Little Na's pokeball. Little Na could have killed them on the spot, but she decided to wait for the pokeball to cool down before stowing them away into her pokeball. The 3 Holy Golden Guardians should be neat and tidy. After stowing away the 3 Holy Golden Guardians, Yi Deng had gone on a rampage and severely wounded Su Xiaolan and Xiao Zhe with a single sword strike, so she hurriedly transferred the 2 of them to another battlefield for treatment. We can't hold on any longer. The Starfire battleship won't be able to hold on for much longer. We have to get out of here, Tina said in a panicked voice as she looked at the crumbling battleship in the distance. Su Xiaolan's jade dress was stained with blood, and she pursed her lips tightly as she looked up at the shattered Blood Patriarch Holy Palace with a stubborn expression. If we leave now, Anlin will have to face an enraged Yi Deng after coming out of the Holy Land with so much difficulty. He'll be in great danger, won't he? Well, a hesitant expression appeared on Tina's face. She was clearly also concerned about Anlin's situation. However, right at this moment, a smile suddenly appeared on Su Xiaolan's face. He's back. The massive fiend celestial over 10,000 feet tall pounced toward the Starfire battleship again, and the battleship quickly retreated while unleashing a barrage of super-kinetic energy blast. The infernal Rakshasa used swords, sabers, spears, hammers, halberds, tridents, all types of weapons to knock aside one kinetic energy blast after another. Occasionally, a few of the kinetic energy blasted through its body, but it was completely fearless as it roared and pounced toward the Starfire battleship. Lu Qianhuan was most afraid of enemies like this. They were completely unreasonable. Big Sister Bai, is the Starfire annihilation cannon still not ready? Lu Qianhuan yelled. Bai Ling shook her head. No, it's only 80% full. Crap. Lu Qianhuan was on the verge of tears at the sight of the oncoming infernal Rakshasa. Right at this moment, a white-robed figure appeared in front of the Starfire battleship. His demeanor was outstanding and his aura was like a rainbow. Bai Ling was ecstatic. Lu Qianhuan screamed, "Daddy and you're finally here, Hua." That's right, the man who had appeared in front of the Starfire battleship was none other than Holy Leader Enlin. Neither of them questioned whether Enlin would be able to defend himself against the infernal Rakshasa's attack. They both knew that Enlin was extremely reliable when he appeared in such a confident manner. Enlin looked at the infernal Rakshasa. He had yet to fully recover from his exhaustion, so he was unable to unleash his powers of the heavenly gods or even unleash his threefold buff technique. However, that didn't matter. He still had a powerful trump card he could use. He pulled out a silvery white longsword from his storage ring. It was flawless and glowed with a faint light, and a crisp ringing sound erupted as soon as it appeared. "This is probably my most expensive trump card." A wistful expression appeared on Enlin's face as he looked at the blade of the sword. "The Great Harmony Immortal Sword. I extracted a wind essence crystal from a realm of endless wind and tempered it for 3,000 years with Feng Wuya's power of the divine Tao. This is an extremely powerful intermediate rank immortal sword among wind types. When I was at the soul formation stage, I was unable to use this technique against immortal tools. However, after reaching the return to void stage, I will be able to unleash even more power from the 6 strikes of the war god." Cracks began to appear on the surface of the silvery white longsword. Terrifying energy imbued with the aura of an immortal tool proliferated outward. 6 strikes of the war god, sword burial. Bam! The Great Harmony Immortal Sword exploded. Chapter 14:18. The sudden shattering of the immortal sword came as a shock to everyone. One had to realize that immortal tools were all extremely sturdy, and even Tao integration stage super mighty figures would find it difficult to shatter them. As such, the fact that an immortal tool had been shattered so easily was quite a shock to everyone. Amidst their astonishment, they turned to look at Enlin. Enlin was the culprit behind the destruction of the immortal tool. Before anyone had a chance to do anything, a drastic turn of events unfolded. Gale force winds howled for over 3,000 kilometers. 99 tornadoes that connected heaven and earth appeared around Enlin, all of which roared like giant dragons as their bodies twisted and contorted, tearing apart everything in this world. The infernal Rakshasa had no intention of unleashing a spell technique on Enlin. It pounced toward Enlin, and its 8 weapon-wielding arms unleashed a series of monstrous crimson techniques to vanquish the several dozen tornadoes that were hurtling toward it. Roar! Die, die, die! The infernal Rakshasa swept through the tornadoes in its path as it closed in on Enlin. An expression of agony appeared on Enlin's face. He was suffering from a backlash from unleashing a spell technique. An immortal tool had been destroyed just like that, and the pain of the backlash was so excruciating that he felt like he was about to faint. Millions of spirit stones. The fragments of the Great Harmony Immortal Sword transformed into pristine white powder that fluttered in front of Enlin before transforming into a gust of wind that seemed to exist for eternity. The essence of the immortal tool had been completely unleashed. This was the power of wind that had been accumulated for countless years. "Look out!" Su Xiaolan let loose a cry of surprise. The infernal Rakshasa had already broken through all of the tornadoes and was already upon Enlin, upon which its massive, blood-stained saber came crashing down with the power to slice heaven and earth apart. Bam! When the saber fell upon Enlin, a black lotus flower blossomed in midair, keeping this earth-shattering attack at bay. Feng Wuya had forged this immortal tool with his power of the divine Tao for 3,000 years, and he had finally unleashed all of that power, which transformed into a black lotus flower that protected Enlin. Wind rise. Enlin made a grabbing motion with one hand, and a sparkling white wind gathered in his hand like a sword. It stretched for 300 miles between heaven and earth. It was born from a place where the wind never stopped, and it would never be extinguished. Yun Luo. Enlin wielded the 300-li wind sword and slashed at the mad Hell Azura in front of him. The wind carried with it the might to tear the heavens and earth apart as it descended mercilessly. The infernal Shura's battle instincts were still present, and it could sense the terrifying power in front of it. The 8 divine weapons on its arms immediately erupted with extremely powerful divine light as they slashed toward Enlin's wind sword in a frenzy. However, the wind sword in Enlin's hand seemed like it would never be extinguished. No matter how many times it was brutally attacked, it would never stop flowing. Roar! The infernal Rakshasa roared in despair. The 300-li wind sword seemed to be threatening to slice the entire world in half as it descended upon its head, slicing open its skin and slicing open its skull, which was even harder than Xian's steel. It was like a hot knife through butter, and its gargantuan body was instantly sliced in half. The infernal Rakshasa finally let loose a wail of anguish as its body plummeted toward the ground, from which blood gushed forth like a river. However, the life force of the blood tribe was extremely powerful. Its body that had been sliced in half began to squirm, and it was showing signs of healing again. However, the wind sword was relentless. It transformed into countless terrifyingly sharp wind blades that continued to slice through the infernal Rakshas's body in a frenzy. All of the blood tribe cultivators in the immortal spirit paradise were stunned upon seeing this. Enlin had been on the back foot during his battle against Emperor Deng, but now, he was able to insta-kill Emperor Deng with a single strike? Enlin's wind sword had completely exceeded their imaginations. This wasn't a sword technique of this world. What sword technique could only be unleashed by sacrificing an immortal sword to the heavens? Slaying the infernal Rakshasa with a single sword strike. Is this the true power of the sacred ancestor they followed? Enlin rescued the 3 holy disciples from the blood tribe Holy Land. Doesn't that mean that even Emperor Enmang will be able to stop him? I really didn't think that Enlin would be able to turn the most sacred place in our blood tribe upside down. At this point, all of the blood tribe powerful beings had completely lost their will to fight. When he looked at Enlin, it was as if he had seen a war god who had descended from the heavens, standing proudly in the heavens. He was so mighty and invincible. Holy leader. All of the holy worshippers stared up at the man in the sky with scorching light in their eyes. Enlin glanced at the struggling infernal Rakshasa on the ground, and his brows furrowed slightly. He discovered that the infernal Rakshasa's life force was still extremely vigorous. Is it really that hard to kill? Enlin heaved a forlorn sigh before turning to all of the blood tribe mighty figures at the immortal spirit paradise. All holy worshippers, listen up. Return to the 4-9 immortal sect with me. Yes, Lord Sacred Ancestor. All of the holy disciples' eyes were burning with excitement. They knew what Enlin's words entailed. This meant that the holy leader had officially acknowledged them, and they were going to become members of the holy blood cult. Enlin wasn't a careless person. This battle at the immortal spirit paradise was the perfect opportunity to test the loyalty of the holy worshippers. All of the holy worshippers were willing to lay down their lives for him and face the blood tribe Tao integration stage emperors head-on with the determination to die. This was already a good proof of their loyalty. Enlin stepped forward and arrived before Su Xiaolan. Are you all right, Xiaolan? Enlin was struck by an indescribable sense of pain and rage at the sight of her blood-stained body. I'm fine. Let's get out of here. Su Xiaolan held onto Enlin's hand. Enlin nodded. My last attack wasn't enough to kill Emperor Deng. Once the power of the sword burial disappears, his terrifying regenerative abilities will allow him to quickly recover his combat prowess, and it'll be very difficult for us to escape. Giant Enlin, should we go to the battleship first? Tina asked. Enlin faltered slightly before coming to his senses and nodding in response. Was her role as the battleship already so ingrained in everyone's hearts? Tina clapped her hands together, and a white spatial divine light proliferated outward, instantly teleporting everyone onto the deck of the Starfire battleship. Cassidy and the others immediately rushed over with grateful expressions at the sight of the injured Su Xiaolan. Holy Maiden Su Xiaolan, I didn't think that you would come here in person to save us. It's our fault that you're injured. Cassidy and the others were both touched and ashamed at the same time. All right, there's no need to thank me, Su Xiaolan said with a dainty smile. At the same time, she added in her mind, I'm here to worry about Enlin, not you guys. I don't want to save you cheese who are always trying to seduce Enlin. Is everyone here? I'm going to run now. Lu Qianhuan's giggling voice sounded. She was very happy that she could finally get away from that Yideng maniac. Bai Ling, Su Xiaolan, Xiao Zhe, Tina, Cassidy, Merlin, Tobias, and the remaining 10 returned to Void Stage holy worshippers had all gathered on the deck of the battleship. A smile appeared on Enlin's face. Let's go home. Chapter 14-19. The Starfire battleship's protective barrier enshrouded everyone, and the entire battleship was as black as the night sky with specks of starlight glowing from afar. Starfire acceleration! Lu Qianhuan let loose a clear cry as countless stars appeared around the battleship. A boundless power of stars propelled the massive battleship at an increasing speed. A kilometer per second, 10,000 meters per second in the end, the 100-kilometer-long warship began to sink into the void, disappearing into the sea of stars. The immortal spirit paradise had been reduced to rubble, but there were still some blood tribe survivors here. They all heaved heavy sighs of relief as they looked on at the direction in which the battleship had disappeared. Phew! Thank God we managed to avoid a calamity. We didn't avoid a calamity, Enlin only spared us. If he wanted to kill us, it would have been a piece of cake for him. What did he mean when he said that all ambitious cultivators were welcome to join the Holy Blood cult? I think he meant exactly what he said. All of the Blood tribe powerful beings looked at each other as a peculiar thought appeared in their minds. Roar! Roar! The infernal Rakshasa was still struggling frantically on the ground. The power of the wind sword was beginning to disappear, and its massive body was quickly fusing back together as a terrifying blood energy soared into the sky again. Kill! I'm going to kill all of you! A terrifying killing intent erupted forth alongside the infernal Rakshasa's roar. Run! Emperor Yi Deng is still in a berserk state. All of the Blood tribe powerful beings immediately fled into the distance upon seeing this. One of the Blood tribe powerful beings didn't even get a chance to move before a mountainous meteor hammer came crashing down toward him, which continued to expand in his field of vision. Boom! Earth tremored violently. A massive crater appeared on the immortal spirit paradise. As for that Blood tribe powerful being, he had already been completely obliterated. All of the Blood tribe powerful beings fled even faster upon seeing this, but at the same time, a sense of sorrow welled up in their hearts. They had risked their lives for their emperor, but in the end, not only were they in danger of being killed by their enemies, but they were also in danger of being killed by their enraged emperor. The immortal spirit paradise descended into chaos again. Yi Deng, who had lost his mind, was like a god of destruction as he rampaged through the immortal spirit paradise, slashing people and splitting mountains in his path. Not long after, the black silk appeared in the distance, connecting to the immortal spirit paradise. A clear shout came from afar. Eden, are you crazy? A woman in a black imperial robe strode toward Yi Deng and pressed a hand toward the air. Countless threads of silk frantically wrapped around the 8-armed demon god on the ground, binding it tightly like rope. It's Empress Helen. Great, there's finally hope. The group of Blood tribe members looked at the woman in the distance, and it was as if they had seen a goddess. They were so moved that tears welled up in their eyes. Roar! The infernal Rakshasa was still struggling. Helen gritted her teeth as she injected her power of the divine Tao into the silk to repress the infernal Rakshasa's rampage. The two sides seemed to be in a deadlock. At this moment, an indistinct voice came from above. Suppress! A giant golden palm covered the sky. Descending from the sky. Before the palm had even arrived, the infernal Inferno Azura was already forced to kneel on the ground. The giant golden palm became smaller and smaller, but its power became more and more terrifying. The joints all over the infernal Rakshasa's body creaked, as if it were about to collapse. All of the blood tribe cultivators could see a graceful figure descend from the sky with a glowing palm that was crashing down toward the infernal Rakshasa's head. Bam! A resounding boom erupted as golden ripples proliferated outward for over 50 kilometers. Countless golden divine symbols spread from the infernal Rakshasa's head to its entire body. The infernal Rakshasa howled with agony, and it clutched its head as if it were about to explode. At the same time, its body began to shrink, and its blood energy quickly dissipated like a deflated balloon. Not long after that, the infernal Rakshasa transformed back into Eden. Eden's features were deathly pale, and he panted heavily as he knelt to the ground. He seemed to have suffered severe backlash, and he threw up a few more mouthfuls of blood. The golden divine symbols were still flashing on his body, sealing away his power. What's happening to me? Eden was in a daze as he stared at the ruins in front of him. You've lost control, Eden. Look at everything before you. This is all your fault. Helen spoke in a cold voice with an extremely dark expression. She discovered that the 3 holy golden guardians that she was most proud of had all disappeared. You had the Blood Patriarch formation, so how did it end up like this? I think it's time for you to explain everything to me. Emperor Fu Tian's expression was just as unfriendly. Anyone would be enraged to see their home torn apart like this. Eden's lips trembled as memories flooded into his mind. His body shuddered as an expression of rage and horror appeared on his face. It's Enlin. Enlin? Emperor Fu Tian and Empress Helen's expressions both shifted at the same time. Emperor Yi Deng began to recount everything that had happened here. Enlin had launched a self-detonating rocket attack, and he was only at the return to void stage, but he was already terrifyingly powerful. All of the blood tribe mighty figures had rebelled as holy worshippers, and he had rescued the 3 holy disciples from the blood tribe Holy Land with a Tao integration stage battleship. Emperor Fu Tian and Empress Helen listened to all of this with incredulity etched on their faces. There was only one thought in their minds. And that was, how did Enlin do this? Emperor Fu Tian. Empress Helen, who was proficient in soul-searching, murmured, "He's not lying, Emperor Fu Tian. The Celestial Court and the 4-9 Immortal Sect sure are cooperating well. Our blood tribe admits defeat this time. By the way, where is Enmang?" Helen suddenly asked. Emperor Fu Tian's expression shifted. Crap. He's still at the blood tribe Holy Land. There was only one holy disciple in the blood tribe at this moment, and that was Emperor Enmang. Emperor Enmang was still at the blood tribe Holy Land, and none of the emperors knew what was going on there. However, a sense of foreboding welled up in all of the emperors' hearts. This day was a cataclysmic one for the blood tribe in the dark marshlands. The 3 holy disciples and many top-rate mighty figures had betrayed the blood tribe. Tens of thousands of blood tribe powerful beings had perished, including a dozen or so returned to void stage mighty figures. Emperor Yi Deng had been severely wounded, and no one knew whether Emperor Enmang was dead or alive. This series of blows had dealt a heavy blow to the blood tribe. Not taking into account everything else, it would probably take over 1,000 years for them to recover within the Starfire battleship. Enlin was meditating on the deck of the battleship, quickly recovering from his injuries. His voice transmission talisman suddenly lit up. He pulled out his voice transmission talisman to find that it was a call from the Celestial Dharch. "Hello, Enlin, are you feeling better? Can you tell me in detail what's going on? Did everything go well?" The Celestial Dharch asked in a concerned voice. "It went pretty well. The 3 holy disciples and 10 holy worshippers have all been rescued. As for the enemy blood tribe powerful beings, tens of thousands of them died, a dozen or so return to void stage mighty figures were killed, and the 3 holy golden guardians were captured alive. Emperor Meng has probably gone insane, and Yi Deng is severely wounded. That's about it, Unlin gave a brief summary. The Celestial Darch. Bad *SS. Chapter 1420. The Celestial Darch truly admired Unlin. There weren't many cultivators that the Celestial Darch admired, but Unlin was the only one that the Celestial Darch had praised as bad *SS. The Celestial Darch couldn't think of any other adjectives to describe what he was feeling, so he could only use the word bad *SS. He and Emperor Ziwei were able to hold off Emperor Fu Tian and Empress Helen. However, the Immortal Spirit Paradise was still guarded by Emperor Yi Deng and Emperor Meng, as well as tens of thousands of powerful Blood Tribe powerful beings and Return to Void Stage Blood Tribe mighty figures. Unlin was only a Return to Void Stage cultivator, but he was able to charge into the Immortal Spirit Paradise just like that. No one would believe him if he told them about this. What the Celestial Darch didn't think was that news would really spread. Even though the Blood Tribe had decided to keep this news a secret, there were still a few Blood Tribe powerful beings who had witnessed everything that had happened in the Immortal Spirit Paradise. Thus, the news spread. Unlin had led the 4-9 Immortal sect to charge into the Blood Tribe's Immortal Spirit Paradise. The 3 holy disciples and a dozen or so Blood Tribe higher-ups had betrayed the Blood Tribe at the same time. All of this was extremely explosive news. The 4-9 Immortal sect dominated all of the headlines on the Tai Chu continent again. Shocking. The sect leader of the model sect of the Kingdom of the 9 States was like this? The sect leader of an immortal sect had this kind of relationship with the higher-ups of the Blood Tribe? This was the man who made the 3 Blood Tribe holy disciples kneel before him. He was the sect leader, as well as the holy leader of the Blood Tribe. Was Unlin good or evil? The 3 holy disciples had bowed to him, the 4 emperors had all knelt, and he had once fought against an army of 10 million. So this was the truth behind the Blood Tribe's Immortal Spirit Paradise? Men fell silent and women shed tears. Countless pieces of news circulated throughout the entire continent, and the names of Unlin and the 4-9 Immortal sect soon reverberated throughout the entire continent. Not only were normal cultivators astonished this time, but many of the first-rate powers on the continent were also astonished by the power displayed by the 4-9 Immortal sect. Many of the mighty figures were dumbstruck. The 4-9 Immortal sect was growing way too quickly. They had just battled the Dragon Court of the Eastern Seas last year, and now, they had almost destroyed the entire Blood Tribe base this year. Did they have to be so freakish? It wasn't that no one doubted the authenticity of the news, but the fact that the upper echelons of the blood race remained silent on the matter even though the news had spread like wildfire in the outside world. It was as if they had fallen silent, which further confirmed the authenticity of the news. The 4-9 Immortal sect's prestige soared once again in the hearts of all living beings on the continent. Previously, everyone thought that this was a top cultivation sect that could rival the 9 imperial clans. Now, everyone was beginning to think that it was a first-rate force on the continent that could rival the 4 major celestial sects. Kings of World. This was a terrifying power that had a Dao integration stage super mighty figure among its ranks, and it didn't have to bow down to anyone. The 4-9 Immortal sect didn't have a Dao integration stage super mighty figure among its ranks, but it had the Return to Void stage Unlin. The story of Unlin hanging Eden up and hammering him had almost become an illusion that all the children knew. An exceptional prodigy whose power rivaled that of a Dao integration stage super mighty figure would be treated as a Dao integration stage super mighty figure regardless of whether you were a Dao integration stage super mighty figure or not. That was how realistic the living beings of the Tai Chu continent were. Dragon Court of the Eastern Seas. Ao Meng and his children stared at the newspaper with their mouths agape. Fake. This has to be fake. How did Unlin kill so many people in the Immortal Spirit Paradise? Ao Meng's hands trembled as he held onto the newspaper. Just what kind of powerful being had he provoked? Pass down my orders. No one was allowed to provoke the 4-9 Immortal Sect for any reason. All violators will be banished from the Dragon Court. Ao Meng yelled. Princess Yin Yu of the Dragon Court was also staring blankly at the man in the newspaper. When you were at the spirit nurturing stage, I was also at the spirit nurturing stage. When you were at the soul formation stage, I was still at the spirit nurturing stage. When you were at the return to void stage, I was still at the spirit nurturing stage. When you pummeled a Tao integration stage super mighty figure, I was still at the spirit nurturing stage. Tears welled up in Princess Yin Yu's eyes. Perhaps it was because she hated herself for being so stupid, or perhaps it was because of the speed at which Enlin was progressing. The Dragon Court was scared **less, and the Dark Wing tribe was also scared **less. On the floating continent, the Dark Wing tribe's meeting was going on as usual. The Dark Wing tribe emperor sat on his throne and looked down at the monarch. The Moonlit Night Monarch is currently at a critical juncture in her Tao integration stage after intercepting Enlin and seizing the evil-slaying sword. It looks like the mission to seize the evil-slaying sword actually contains a massive opportunity. Monarchs, are there any who would like to accompany me to intercept Enlin and seize the evil-slaying sword? Everyone was astonished upon hearing this. The Dark Wing tribe emperor, who had always been afraid of death, was planning to take Enlin's evil-slaying sword by force. The Dark Wing tribe emperor stood up and spoke in a heroic voice. Who is willing to accompany me to seize the holy relic of our tribe, the evil-slaying sword? Within the palace, all the monarchs looked up at the emperor on the throne with hesitation in their eyes. Starry Night Monarch, you are the first monarch to accept the mission to seize the evil-slaying sword. I will be leading the team this time. Are you willing to accompany me? The Dark Wing Emperor asked in a heroic voice. The Starry Night Monarch's voice became even more heroic. Dark Wing Emperor, I am willing to provide energy for the heart of the heavens for another 100 years. Dark Wing Emperor, why was the Starry Night Monarch able to refuse in such a straightforward manner? And why was there a hint of smugness and pride in her voice? Heavenly Night Monarch, you are the most powerful monarch among the monarchs. How about you accompany me? The Dark Wing Emperor asked. Heavenly Night Monarch, hee. The veins on the Dark Wing Emperor's forehead bulged. Correct your attitude. The Heavenly Night Monarch's expression became serious. I'm not going. The Dark Wing Emperor. After a series of discussions, the Dark Wing Emperor fell into a state of deep self-doubt as he sat on his throne. Sigh. I'm so lonely. All of the monarchs would rather carry bricks and build new homes than accompany the Dark Wing Emperor to seize the evil-slaying sword within the Sea Heart Palace of the West Sea. Lan Xiaoni's eyes were like stars as she read the newspaper. Big Boss Enlin is so awesome. He's turned the entire blood tribe upside down. Lan Xingyang also sighed with emotion. As expected of the super heavenly lightning god. With his rate of growth, perhaps he'll be able to carry out that grand plan soon. We have to work harder as well. Within the cabin of life. Master Enlin is already able to pummel Yideng. Can you let me spar with him? Black Spirit Snake implored. Nuwa was playing with the potted plant before her with a faint smile on her face. What's so great about beating Yideng? You can beat him as well. Black Spirit Snake asked. Then how powerful do I have to be before I can spar with Enlin? When he's more powerful than you, Nuwa replied. Black Spirit Snake. Is this how you bully snakes? Am I your little cutie, or is Enlin your little cutie? Black Spirit Snake felt like she had fallen out of favor. Just as the outside world was in a frenzy due to the Immortal Spirit Paradise incident. The 4-9 Immortal Sect was decorated with lanterns and banners to welcome their newest member. Chapter 1421. Pitter-patter, outside the gates of the 4-9 Immortal Sect, spell firecrackers rang out across the entire grassland. Colorful fireworks soared into the sky, creating a series of vibrant flowers and totems in the night sky. Inside the sect, red and gold lanterns were hung up. The flickering flames illuminated the monotonous night sky with mottled shadows. On a small plaza near the full moon mountain, thousands of people had gathered here to hold a large-scale celebration. It was extremely lively. This was a grand occasion where all of the 4-9 Immortal Sect's core members, inner sect disciples, and outer sect disciples were gathered together to celebrate. There were male and female disciples dancing on the stage. There were also disciples drinking to their heart's content, sparring with one another, bragging, or participating in all types of challenges and raffle events. The 4-9 Immortal Sect had become the fifth sect in the Kingdom of the Nine State. All of the inner sect disciples and outer sect disciples were extremely proud to be part of the 4-9 Immortal Sect. They could hold their heads high even when they were outside. Of course, there was no way that the 4-9 Immortal Sect would bully others. You want to ask why? Let's recite the 4-9 Immortal Sect's mission statement first. Freedom, democracy, harmony. The 4-9 Immortal Sect was still an elite sect, and they only had a total of just over 5,000 disciples, and this was only the number of inner sect disciples and outer sect disciples. As for the other 4 super sects, they would have at least a few 100,000 or even 1,000,000 disciples. Looking at it this way, the 4-9 Immortal Sect did indeed have a small population. However, that didn't matter. Unlin didn't care how many people there were. He couldn't just randomly accept disciples, especially inner sect disciples. They had to be liked by the Pavilion Lords and be to their liking. Furthermore, if the 4-9 Immortal Sect from the Divine Mirror World and the Divine Source Continent were taken into account, then the 4-9 Immortal Sect would actually be more powerful than the 4 Super Immortal Sects. Look, the sect leader is here. Ah, should I go and offer him a toast? Some of the female disciples couldn't help but squeal, while others were completely infatuated. As the outer sect disciples of the 4-9 Immortal Sect, this was the first time that they had seen their legendary sect leader up close. He really was just as handsome as the rumors described him to be. He was handsome, elegant, and dignified, and Lin was very familiar with this kind of gaze. It was actually a form of personal worship that was enhanced by various halos. He was still very aware of his own appearance. No matter what, his face was still slightly inferior to Brother Cheng's. As soon as Lin thought of this, he smiled brightly at the disciples who were looking at him. This scene caused the female disciples to scream again. He wandered around because he wanted to get acquainted with the outer sanctum disciples. After all, they often carried out missions in various parts of the 9 states, and it was quite tiring for them. As the sect leader, he naturally had to get closer to them. From time to time, he would drink with his disciples, chat, and ask for their suggestions or thoughts. When a female disciple invited him to dance, he would politely refuse. After all, he wasn't that kind of person. Su Xiaolan was still here. He still wanted to live well. Everyone was happy for a while. Lin made his way to the front of the stage, and thunderous applause erupted before he even had a chance to say anything. He looked at the familiar and unfamiliar faces below the stage, and he couldn't help but smile. Lin cleared his throat. Next, let me introduce the new members of the Blood Pavilion. There are a total of 13 new members of the Blood Pavilion, which are Cassidy, Tobias, Merlin, Jesse. A series of crimson-robed blood-tried mighty figures with golden hair and crimson eyes made their way to the front of the stage before bowing and waving at the disciples below with smiles on their faces. All of the 5,000 disciples drew a sharp intake of breath upon seeing this. These 13 new members are all Return to Void stage mighty figures, right? I've heard that they are, and they're all veteran Return to Void intermediate stage mighty figures. Tobias and Jesse are even Return to Void final stage mighty figures. What a terrifying lineup! All of them are Return to Void stage mighty figures. Just the Blood Pavilion alone is comparable to the 9 Imperials. all of the disciples exclaimed in amazement, and even the pavilion lords and elders were dazed. An envious expression appeared on Tang Shimen's face. There are so many mighty figures, but only Enlin can keep them at bay. Lu Qianhuan harumphed. I'm not convinced. I can keep them at bay too. If these people don't behave, I don't mind giving them a taste of the Starfire Annihilation Cannon. Su Qianyun cocked her head to the side as she turned her dreamy blue eyes toward the woman beside her. Lu Qianhuan, aren't you a young sorceress? Why are you a young sorceress now? Lu Qianhuan giggled. A young sorceress is also a type of young sorceress. She wasn't going to say that she was tired of using a few of Lux's techniques. Oh. Su Qianyun nodded with a hint of understanding in her eyes. On the stage, Enlin continued, next we will be assigning members to the Blood Pavilion. First, the Pavilion Lord of the Blood Pavilion, Blair, has retired as an elder due to his advanced age. Tobias will be the Pavilion Lord, Cassidy and Merlin will be the Vice Pavilion Lords, and everyone else will be the core disciples of the Blood Pavilion. All of the disciples swallowed involuntarily upon seeing this. The Blood Pavilion should be the most powerful pavilion in the 4-9 Immortal Sect, right? Of course. Even the weakest disciple is a Return to Void intermediate stage mighty figure. Where are you going to find a pavilion branch like this? Even the 4 great sects aren't this bad *SS, right? I've only been in seclusion for 2 years. What happened to the 4-9 Immortal Sect? All of the disciples were discussing spiritedly among themselves. The Blood Pavilion was the most powerful pavilion in the 4-9 Immortal Sect? Xiao Zhe smiled and didn't say anything. The 3 Return to Void final stage mighty figures of the Dragon Pavilion hadn't even said anything, and Xiao Tu was a Return to Void stage mighty figure who was preparing for the Dao integration stage. Bai Ling of the Purple Star Pavilion also smiled. The Starfire battleship of her Purple Star Pavilion hadn't even opened fire yet. Tina also raised her proud little face. If she brought out a bunch of Return to Void stage mighty figures from her Realm Pavilion, it would be quite a terrifying sight. In another 100 years, the Divine Mirror World would become more powerful than anyone could imagine. The introduction of new members concluded. The plaza transformed into a sea of joy again. Not only were there all types of interesting activities and competitions, but there were also all sorts of mighty figures displaying their Dao techniques and true intent. Enlin's disciples all performed very well in all of these activities. For example, Xiao Zhe, who wasn't very good with words, took first place in the sweet talk competition. Not only was Fanny flirted with, but even some of the female and male disciples were blushing upon hearing this. Enlin had also taken down a lot of notes during this activity. Another example was Yi Ling, who imitated a cat's meow in an adorable manner and won first place over Dabai. Dabai was actually quite indignant. Yi Ling clearly wasn't as adorable as him. The main judge, Enlin, analyzed the situation. Dabai was adorable to begin with, so he didn't need to sell himself, so the winner of the Adorable Manner competition went to Yi Ling. Dabai was completely defeated by this explanation. There were many other fun activities like this. The 4-9 Immortal Sect's celebratory activities lasted for an entire night. All of the disciples only began to disperse the next morning. Enlin didn't disperse. Instead, he looked at all of the Blood Tribe mighty figures before him with a solemn expression. Chapter 1422. Cassidy, Tobias, Merlin, Bryce, Jesse, and a total of 14 Return to Void stage Blood Tribe mighty figures stood before Enlin with solemn expressions. Holy Leader, please tell me what you want. I'm willing to do anything for you. Cassidy's eyes shone with a scorching light as she spoke in an extremely determined voice. Don't overthink things. Enlin's expression eased slightly as he said in a gentle voice, I called you all here so that you can help me test my blood. Test his blood? 14 pairs of eyes instantly lit up with unprecedented light. I'll do it. I'll do it. Pick me. Pick me. Holy Leader, pick me. I'm willing to take on this noble mission. I'm an expert at testing blood. I can lick as much blood as you want." All of the Blood Tribe mighty figures were extremely excited as they yelled at the top of their lungs, hoping to get a spot. Unlin raised his voice at the sight of the fervent mighty figures around him. "Let me finish first. Some of you might not know what kind of properties my holy blood possesses, but I'm not sure if you're aware of it. All of the Blood Tribe cultivators who can withstand the power of my holy blood will feel extremely elated. However, all of the Blood Tribe cultivators who can't withstand the power of my holy blood will die on the spot. Have you all realized this? Yes. Let me do it, holy leader. I'll do it. I'm not afraid of death. I'll do anything for you, holy leader." All of the Blood Tribe mighty figures were still yelling with fervor in their eyes. They had tasted Enlin's blood before, and they had never failed to withstand the power of his holy blood. How could they give up on such a blissful opportunity? Enlin immediately knew what they were thinking, and he added, "When I was at the soul formation stage, Return to Void initial stage Blood Tribe mighty figures were also able to withstand my holy blood. However, ever since I achieved initial success in my body of the War God, all Return to Void initial stage Blood Tribe mighty figures who came into contact with my holy blood would die for sure. Thus, my holy blood became Return to Void intermediate stage. Now I've made another major breakthrough, and I'm a Return to Void stage cultivator. Do you understand what I'm saying?" All of the Blood Tribe mighty figures drew a sharp intake of breath upon hearing this. So the sacred ancestor's sacred blood would become stronger and stronger? He was able to poison Return to Void initial stage cultivators to death at the soul formation stage. Now that he was a Return to Void stage cultivator, would he really be able to poison them to death? The Return to Void intermediate stage Blood Tribe mighty figures were beginning to hesitate. They felt that there was a high chance that they would die if they drank the latest version of the divine blood. It felt good, but he couldn't throw his life away for the sake of it. As long as he was alive, he would have the opportunity to enjoy himself countless times. Sacrificing one's life for a single pleasure was called idiocy. The holy disciples looked hesitant. They were fanatical and loyal, but they were not stupid. It was not worth it to waste their lives here. The warm atmosphere on the scene suddenly cooled down. Just as the fanaticism on the faces of the Blood Tribe's supreme beings gradually subsided, a figure stepped forward. "Sacred Ancestor, allow me." A well-built man with a buzz cut looked at Enlin with a firm expression. "If I die as well, then there's no point in continuing the holy blood test." The person who had stepped forward was none other than the Return to Void final stage Tobias, who was also the Lord of the Blood Pavilion. All of the Blood Tribe mighty figures were struck by a sense of awe and veneration as they looked at the departing figure. Tobias had reached the Return to Void final stage with great difficulty, but he was still willing to take this risk. This was the Blood Pavilion Lord that they were all convinced of. Enlin looked at Tobias with a serious expression before patting his shoulder with a smile. "I was right about you. Good job. However, we don't need a Return to Void final stage mighty figure for now. There will be someone else to replace you." Tobias faltered slightly upon hearing this. "Who's going to replace me?" At this moment Tina, who had been sitting silently on Enlin's shoulder this entire time, suddenly pulled out a black ball with a dainty smile. "The 3 holy golden guardians. They're still in my hands." Almost all of the Blood Tribe mighty figures' expressions shifted upon hearing this. The 3 holy golden guardians were Ada, Jean Yao, and Jean Ling. They were the most powerful Return to Void stage mighty figures in the Blood Tribe, and they could unleash power comparable to that of a Tao integration stage mighty figure for a short period of time. Their status in the Blood Tribe is only inferior to the Emperors and the Holy Disciples. I didn't think that you'd be able to capture them as well. Cassidy's crimson eyes shimmered with excitement. Mistress Tina is so impressive. She was able to capture 3 holy golden guardians on her own. Merlin was also astonished. The holy golden guardians were undoubtedly extremely powerful, so it was extremely difficult for her to capture all three of them alive. All right, that's enough. And Lin smiled. I asked them to test the properties of the blood so that you'll be safer when you receive my new blood. He turned to Tina as he spoke. Come on. Tina nodded before leaping backward. At the same time, she waved a hand and tossed the black ball toward Enlin. Come on in, Pikachu. Whoosh. A white light enshrouded Enlin. Enlin could sense an extremely irresistible spatial suction force from the light. He was unable to resist this spatial suction force and was instantly sucked in. Master! Holy Leader! All of the Blood Tribe mighty figures were given a fright upon seeing Enlin being sucked into the ball. Don't worry, he's very safe in my Pokeball. Tina carefully retrieved the ball before injecting her divine sense into it. Enlin was struck by a rush of dizziness, and when he regained his vision, he had already arrived at a place with lush mountains and clear waters. Wasn't this place a little too good to be used as a cage? Bam bam bam! The sound of something being smashed erupted from a nearby mountain. Enlin made his way over to discover a Vulpera with a black tail and black ears wielding a hoe as it smashed a strange black mountain to dig out a series of strange crystals. Each and every one of its strikes was imbued with the power of the divine Tao, but the black mountain was extremely tough, and it only managed to dig out a small crystal after a long time. I only need to dig out 3 more tons of crystals, and I can rest for the rest of the day. The black fox male was sweating profusely, but he was still smashing the mountain with a joyful expression. Goddess Tina has reduced my workload by 1/2 kilogram. Long live the goddess! Enlin, this guy was probably going to be crippled. He was a return to void stage sword immortal, couldn't he just be a little more stubborn? The black fox male detected the commotion behind him, and a faint smile appeared on his face. Hee, another newcomer? I hope you know what's good for you. Tina is the most important person in this world, so don't go against Goddess Tina. Otherwise. He turned to look at Enlin, but his words were caught in his throat before he even had a chance to finish his sentence. The man's expression slowly turned from astonishment to excitement. Enlin. The black fox male was on the verge of tears at the sight of Enlin, and he hurriedly ran over to him. Are you here to take me out? I've been through hard labor, and I'm a good boy. Enlin's lips twitched. I'm not here to look for you today. Let me ask you, have you seen the 3 blood tribe females? The black fox male nodded relentlessly. I have. If you promise to let me go, I'll tell you where they are. Hee. Do you not understand the situation you're in? Enlin chuckled coldly. Do you believe me when I tell you that I'll get Tina to increase your workload by 1 ton every day? They're on that mountain. The black fox male pointed toward a certain mountain. Enlin nodded with satisfaction before disappearing on the spot. Soon, he found the legendary 3 golden holy protectors. Enlin was then given a fright again. Chapter 1423. The 3 holy golden guardians were cowering at the edge of the boulder with expressions of shock and horror on their faces as they trembled uncontrollably. A man was standing before them with a perverted smile on his face. Kukoku, run. Let's see where you can run to. The man licked his lips in a perverted manner as he spoke. If it weren't for the fact that our powers have been sealed, we wouldn't have been bullied by you. Ada gritted her teeth with an enraged expression. Cut the crap, are you going to obey or not? The man chuckled as he pulled out a whip. If you don't obey, I'll whip you. Ada, Jean Ling, and Jean Yao all looked as if they were facing death with equanimity. Enlin, if you want to kill us, then kill us! The 3 holy golden guardians roared in unison. That's right, the man who had pulled out the whip was none other than Enlin. The real Enlin stood off to the side with a dumbstruck expression. When he saw the man pull out the whip and was about to lash Enlin, he couldn't hold back any longer and charged out before grabbing onto the man's hand. Who the F*** are you whipping? The The man faltered momentarily before turning to look at the man who looked identical to him. The three holy golden guardians were also staring at the two identical Enlin with dumbstruck expressions. One Enlin suddenly appeared and stopped the other Enlin. You're twins. Jean Ling seemed to have realized something as she exclaimed in shock. Enlin almost threw up a mouthful of blood. Twins my *s. Splat. He slapped the fake Enlin into the ground before looking up into the sky. Little Na, I think you owe me an explanation, heave. I seem to have forgotten to get rid of the fake Enlin. Tina's apologetic voice sounded from the sky. That doesn't sound like an explanation. I want an explanation. Enlin's expression darkened. I think your appearance is more intimidating, so I plan to use you as a template to train them. That way, I can get twice the result with half the effort, Tina explained in a low voice. Is this the reason why you made me look so wretched? Enlin felt as if his heart had been stabbed by a sword. Where did that innocent little elf go? Give me back my old cotton-padded jacket. Ada and the rest were stunned. So the perverted Enlin from before was fake? It's mainly because they wouldn't be scared if you weren't a little more perverted. Under Enlin's interrogation, Tina's voice gradually softened as she spoke. Enlin was completely speechless. Was he supposed to be the antagonist for a while now? Pow! He struck out with his palm again, directly turning the fake Enlin into ashes. The brutal scene made Ada, Jean Ling, and Jean Yao's faces turn pale. Only then did Enlin turn his attention to the famous three golden holy guardians of the blood kindred. When he saw their faces clearly, he was stunned once again. All three of them were dressed in golden robes, and their facial features were exquisite and chiseled. Their auras were noble and holy, and they were all quite beautiful. However, that was not the point. More importantly, the three women in front of him all looked exactly the same. Other than Ada's short golden hair, and the gold spirit and the gold demon's wavy long hair, their red eyes, their delicate nose, their curved eyebrows, and their pink lips were exactly the same and indistinguishable. This, Enlin faltered. His first thought was that Tina was pulling a prank again, and he yelled, Little Na, stop fooling around. I didn't do anything. What's wrong? Tina was a little confused. Enlin pointed at the three women before him. Why do these three look exactly the same? Isn't it enough to fake Enlin? Do you want to fake Ada as well? We're triplets. Ada glanced at Enlin with a speechless expression. Enlin stared at Ada and the two people behind her with astonishment on his face. He discovered that they were also looking at him with cold expressions, as if they were looking at an idiot. He suddenly understood why Jean Ling had speculated that he and the fake Enlin were twins. As it turned out, Jean Ling, Jean Yao, and Ada were triplets. During the battle, only Ada had revealed her face, and the other two had been obscured by their black robes, so he didn't see them clearly. Enlin drew a sharp intake of breath before suddenly becoming excited. He looked at the three beautiful, voluptuous, and tall women before him, and he couldn't help but burst into laughter. What do you want? Ada seemed to have sensed Enlin's gaze, and she took a couple of steps back with a cautious expression on her face. The current Enlin was very similar to the fake Enlin from before. Nothing, I just want you to taste my treasures. Enlin approached the three golden holy guardians with a smile. Ada, Jean Ling, and Jean Yao's faces all turned deathly pale upon hearing this. Their powers had all been sealed in this space, so if Enlin really wanted to do something, don't come any closer. Jean Yao drew her golden longsword as she yelled. I'm coming right over. What are you going to do to me? Enlin chuckled coldly. If you come over. Tears welled up in Jean Yao's eyes, and she pressed her longsword against her snowy white neck with an unyielding expression. I'll kill myself right in front of you. Enlin, as expected of the first guardian to be taken in by little Na's pokeball. She sure was adorably dumb. Enlin made a grabbing motion with his hand. Gotcha. Space congealed. Jean Yao was completely immobilized, as if her body had been immobilized. The three women who had been sealed were no different from mortals. They were still at the mercy of Lin. Threatening him with death had no effect on him at all. Expressions of despair appeared on the faces of the triplets upon realizing this. Say, who's the big sister and who's the little sister? Lin asked with a sly smile. Ada pursed her lips as she stood at the very front. I'm the big sister. If you have any problems, come at me. Don't bully them. As expected, the big sister looks more mature than the big sister. This was the first time Lin had seen such unique triplets, and he couldn't help but smack his lips. Ada was already prepared, but she still couldn't help but stumble back a couple of steps at the sight of Lin. However, to their surprise, Lin didn't continue to press them. Instead, he sat down on a protruding rock. Don't worry, I'm not the kind of person you think I am. I'm here to give you a chance to redeem yourselves. As long as you promise me one thing, I can give you a chance to regain your freedom, Lin said. As soon as this was said, the three holy golden guardians were unable to conceal their excitement. They had thought that they were going to be subjected to inhumane torture here, but now that they had a chance to escape, they naturally weren't going to let go of this opportunity. What is it? Ada asked, and Lin smiled. Drink my blood. As long as you promise to drink a mouthful of my blood, I can give you a chance to return to the outside world. Drink your blood. Ada was a little confused. What kind of request is that? Because my blood is very special and very potent. And Lin narrowed his eyes as he looked at the three women before him. After drinking my blood, there's a very high chance that you'll die. Hee, what the hell are you talking about? Us blood tribe cultivators are naturally adept at absorbing the blood of all living beings. There's no blood that we can't drink. Jean Ling chuckled coldly with a disdainful expression. I'll drink it, big sister. Why is my big sister retarded? Slap. Jean Ling was slapped to the ground by Ada. Don't you dare disrespect Master Lin. Jean Ling and Jean Yao. Ada raised her head to look at Lin with a conflicted expression. A faint blush appeared on her face, and she clenched her fists tightly, as if she were resisting something. After a moment, her entire body relaxed, as if she had seen through Lin. I finally understand why so many blood tribe mighty figures are willing to revere you as the holy leader. The answer lies in your blood. Lin also heaved a sigh of relief. Looks like my blood can still be used after reaching the return to void final stage. Ada raised her head to look at Lin. This is not blood from the mortal world. I've never seen such miraculous blood. Who are you? Lin splayed open his hands with a calm expression. I told you, I am the holy leader, the most holy being of your tribe, the one who can give the blood tribe a true future. In the past, Ada would have called Lin an idiot if he had said something like this. But now, Ada's body shuddered, and she clasped a hand over her heart with a pained expression. How could this be? Why is it you, big sister, what's wrong? Jean Yao couldn't help but ask. Jean Ling glared at Lin with a cold harumph. She must have been fed some kind of magic potion by this man. It's not some magic potion. It's my blood that has allowed her to observe the true meaning of life. If you don't believe me, you can have a taste. Lin slit open his wrist and offered a few drops of blood to the two women. Ada saw this, but did nothing to stop it. She felt like it would be a huge pity if her two little sisters didn't get a chance to taste such perfect blood. In all honesty, she was already doing a very good job of refraining from stealing the blood from her little sisters. Jean Ling and Jean Yao had initially planned to slap the droplets of blood away. However, they faltered when the scent of the blood wafted toward them, and they couldn't help but stick out their tongues to lick the blood cautiously like little kittens. It was as if they had opened the door to a new world, and they couldn't stop themselves. How could this be? What kind of blood is this? Jean Ling's breathing accelerated. Master Lin, I was wrong. Jean Yao whimpered. Can you give me a few more drops? And Lin chuckled coldly. You're free now, so piss off. Jean Yao looked at Lin with a pitiable expression and didn't move. Jean Ling also looked around, but she didn't want to say anything. Ada was enraged and she snapped, Look at you too! Can't you be a little more hard-working? Show me your courage. She made her way over to Lin as she spoke, and a stern expression appeared on her face. Tell me, what do you want us to do for you to continue giving us your blood? Jean Ling and Jean Yao's mouths gaped open. Was this the courage that their big sister was talking about? Using their courage to beg for blood? A faint smile appeared on Lin's face. It's very simple. Establish a slave contract with me and become my servants, and I'll reward you with my blood whenever I'm happy. That's right, Lin had never planned to give the Holy Golden Guardians their freedom. The Holy Golden Guardians were very powerful, so letting them go would be akin to letting them go back to the mountains. Lin wasn't going to do something as stupid as that. Even though Lin had sworn to give them their freedom, they had to be willing to do so first. Lin was confident that no one would be able to resist the temptation of his blood, and they would be willing to stay by Lin's side. Lin, is this your plan? Do you think I'll fall for it? You're too naive. I'm a holy golden guardian under Empress Helen's command. Ada gritted her teeth. Big sister, I've fallen for your trap. Jean Yao yelled. Big sister, I've also fallen for your trap, Jean Ling stammered. At the same time, she raised her head to look at Lin with a hint of nervousness and anticipation in her eyes. Ada, you're making things very difficult for Big Sister. I really want to join the enemy. Ada struggled for a long time before tears flowed from her eyes. Little sister, Big Sister will accompany you. Thus, Lin obtained the Blood Tribe triplets in Tina's Pokeball. Chapter 1425. The three Holy Golden Guardians were successfully instigated by Lin and became holy worshippers of the Holy Blood cult. Lin was elated, and he bestowed 1 milliliter of blood to each of the three sisters. The three sisters were instantly ecstatic to see this, and Lin was even beginning to suspect that these women were fake Holy Golden Guardians. Holy Leader, can you let us out now? Ada asked with anticipation in her eyes. Lin nodded with a smile. Of course. He had already established slave contracts with them, and with the allure of his holy blood, the three Holy Golden Guardians were now very obedient. For some reason, Lin suddenly thought of Emperor Mang with this in mind. Emperor Mang was probably the only blood tribe being who could resist the allure of his blood. Lin was quite impressed by him. He didn't know how he was doing and if he had recovered yet. Tina released Lin, Ada, Jean Yao, and Jean Ling into her Pokeball at the same time. Lin was immediately greeted by the sight of all of the Blood Tribe mighty figures looking at him with anticipation in their eyes. My God, it really is the three Holy Golden Guardians! They really are in Mistress Tina's Pokeball, and it looks like they've already been tamed by the Holy Leader, right? All of the Blood Tribe mighty figures discussed among themselves. Lin cleared his throat upon seeing this. Allow me to introduce to all of you the three new core disciples of our Blood Pavilion, Ada, Jean Ling, and Jean Yao. Clatter! Enthusiastic applause erupted. Hello, everyone. Please take care of us in the future. Ada extended an indifferent greeting. She felt like this was a little awkward. They had been enemies just a few days ago, but now they were comrades on the same side. She felt like she had changed too much, and it was a little awkward. However, Cassidy and the others were very enthusiastic in welcoming Ada and the others, as if they were benevolent elders welcoming their lost children. Sister Ada, have you finally realized how attractive our holy leader is? No one can see the blood of a sacred ancestor and not be tempted. Ms. Ada, I wanted to come and find you when I was recruiting offline players, but you were too close to Empress Helen, so I didn't dare to make a move. Who would have thought that fate would take a turn for the better and allow you to join us? The three holy princes were very enthusiastic, and this greatly alleviated the awkwardness of the Golden Holy Protectors. Unlin saw that the three sisters were able to blend into the crowd, and he was very pleased. He clapped his hands to signal for everyone to quiet down. "All right, I'm going to announce a result now. Blood Tribe cultivators of the Return to Void final stage can absorb my holy blood." This result immediately made the Blood Tribe members cheer. "Great! There's hope now. What about Return to Void intermediate stage cultivators?" "Holy Leader, I am at the pinnacle of the Return to Void intermediate stage, and I am willing to do this experiment." Some of the holy disciples were already filled with passion, and their eyes burned with passion as they spoke. Cassidy and Merlin also made up their minds to be the first ones to do the experiment. "Don't argue. How could I allow you to risk your lives? Why don't we just go to the dark marshlands and capture a Blood Tribe intermediate stage mighty figure?" Unlin couldn't help but chuckle upon seeing this. All of the disciples were enlightened upon hearing this, and they all volunteered to go to the dark marshlands in person to carry out this mission. Jean Yao spoke in a feeble voice. "If you want a Blood Tribe cultivator of the Return to Void intermediate stage, I think I can give him to you." Everyone turned to look at Jean Yao upon hearing this. Jean Yao gently removed the golden jade bracelet from her wrist. "This is an immortal rank spatial treasure, and there is a small space within it that can accommodate life forms. It was originally used by Empress Helen to imprison the most heinous of Blood Tribe criminals, and there just so happens to be a Return to Void intermediate stage criminal in there." Unlin was ecstatic. "That's great. Little Yao, hurry up and bring out that criminal." Little Yao?" A blush appeared on Jean Yao's face. No one had ever referred to her like this before. She wanted to say something, but she hesitated before silently teleporting the Return to Void intermediate stage Blood Tribe mighty figure out of the golden jade bracelet. Thump! A man whose hands and feet were bound by peculiar chains fell to his knees. "Hee, Empress Helen is finally going to let me go?" The man with disheveled hair grinned. "You should have done this a long time ago. I'm a Return to Void stage mighty figure, so there's no point in me staying in this prison. Why don't I redeem myself by doing some good deeds?" He stared blankly at the scene before him. What's going on? A bunch of Blood Tribe mighty figures were looking at him with benevolent expressions. He had some recollection of most of these Blood Tribe mighty figures. All of them were extremely renowned powerful beings, and none of them were inferior to him. He discovered that things weren't quite as he had imagined. At this moment, an unfamiliar young man made his way over to him with a smile. "Let you go? That's not going to happen. But I still have to congratulate you, brother. You're going to have a chance to taste the most delicious blood in this world." The Blood Tribe man whose hands and feet were tied sneered, "Human? Who the F***ck are you? Don't look at me like that. When I was dominating the entire Tai Chu continent, who knows where you were drinking milk?" He could sense that Unlin's cultivation base was only at the Return to Void initial stage, so he didn't pay him any heed. Unbeknownst to him, his words had enraged all of the Blood Tribe mighty figures present. "Holy Leader, that piece of trash dared to insult you. Let me kill him first." "Don't. The Holy Leader still needs to use him. We can sever his arms and legs first. Unforgivable. He must be tortured to death." All of the Blood Tribe mighty figures with terrifying auras let loose a torrent of abuse. "Don't worry, we'll repay all those who insult the Holy Leader 1,000-fold. Ada harumphed coldly. In her eyes, the Holy Leader was the most perfect living being. How could she allow a piece of trash to insult her? The Blood Tribe man was dumbstruck. He had only insulted this ordinary-looking human, but he had angered all of the Blood Tribe mighty figures? Even the vastly renowned Holy Golden Guardians of the Blood Tribe were enraged. Their reactions were even more violent than when he had insulted Empress Helen. This time, even a fool would know that the identity of the man in front of him was not simple. "Please spare me, Holy Leader. Please forgive me! Please forgive me! The blood tribe man kowtowed to Enlin with a thump. A man had to know when to yield and when to stand tall. Enlin was given a fright by the man's decisive actions, and he immediately poured blood into the man's mouth. What did you feed me? The man yelled. Ah, this taste. A second later, an intoxicated expression appeared on the man's face as an extreme sense of pleasure flowed through his entire body. All of the blood tribe disciples stared at the man before them with envious expressions, wanting nothing more than to take his place. However, all of a sudden, the man's eyes widened, and he clasped a hand over his own heart. Chapter 14:26. Ah! The blood tribe male clutched his chest with an agonized expression. At the same time, his vitality was quickly fading away. A sense of foreboding welled up in Enlin's heart upon seeing this. It looked like a return to void intermediate stage being couldn't handle his blood. The blood tribe male was still struggling, and he was in as much agony as he had felt before. All of the return to void intermediate stage blood tribe mighty figures were also struck by fear upon seeing this. They weren't afraid of pain. Instead, they were afraid that they would never get a chance to taste the holy blood again. You can do it! Hang in there! Some of the blood tribe mighty figures couldn't help but offer words of encouragement. The blood tribe male clutched his chest, which was glowing with a peculiar red light. All of a sudden, a dazzling red light erupted from his heart. When the red light faded, the male's eyes widened and his mouth gaped open. His entire body had been completely shriveled and devoid of vitality. He's dead? Tears of grief flowed down Cassidy's face. Am I not fated to taste the holy blood? Merlin's eyes were also filled with tears of despair. All of the return to void intermediate stage blood tribe mighty figures were extremely saddened by the blood tribe male's death, and their morale was at an all-time low. Ada finally understood what Enlin was referring to when he said his blood was dangerous. She was still feeling a little fearful, but at the same time, she was also feeling quite elated. Wouldn't there be a lot fewer competitors who could taste the holy leader's blood now? Ada, Jean Ling, and Jean Yao all burst into joyful laughter as if they were of one mind. Enlin offered words of consolation. Don't be too dejected. As long as you attain the divine Tao and progress to the return to void final stage, you'll be able to taste the holy blood. You have to fight for that goal. All of the blood tribe mighty figures finally regained some of their morale upon hearing this. Cassidy and Merlin were both at the pinnacle of the return to void intermediate stage, and their fighting spirit was reignited as their hearts were filled with unprecedented desire and determination. Holy Leader, we'll definitely do our best, Cassidy said with a firm expression. She then added in her heart, I'll do my best to suck your delicious blood dry. A faint smile appeared on Enlin's face. All right, take a good rest. I still have to apply to the Celestial Arch for your legal residency permits in the Kingdom of the Nine State. He was afraid that the powerful beings of the blood tribe would harm the innocent, so he added, Oh, right, you are not allowed to drink the blood of other innocent beings. If you do that, I will kill you on the spot. Tobias was confused. Why would we eat sh*t? Enlin. After tasting Enlin's blood, vampires found it difficult to swallow the blood of other living beings. This was probably what they meant by one who has seen the ocean cannot see the water in it. After settling down the blood tribe disciples, Enlin returned to his residence. He took out Shui Mingming from his storage ring. Master, why didn't you let me go and meet those little fellows just now? Shui Mingming shook its head and said, They haven't been subdued by my heroism yet. Enlin rolled his eyes. All right, now's not the time to flex. I let you out because I wanted to talk to you about my blood. Shui Mingming's eyes immediately lit up with excitement at the mention of blood. Although it didn't have eyes, its two eye sockets were indeed glowing with a red light. It was quite adorable. Sure. I love your blood the most, Master. We can talk about anything. It would be perfect if you could reward me with a few drops of your blood. Meng exclaimed excitedly. That will depend on your performance. And Lin didn't refuse. Immediately afterward, he asked, What do you think my blood is? Meng raised its hands high into the air. Your blood is the light, the future, and the true meaning of life. And Lin's expression darkened. Stop sucking up to me. I want you to tell me the truth. I'm just an ordinary cultivator, so how do I have such powerful blood? The reason why he was asking Meng was because Meng had been transformed from the remains of the blood patriarch, which understood life the most. Logically speaking, it would understand life better than ordinary blood tribe mighty figures. Meng tapped its skull with its finger and fell into deep thought. You're an ordinary cultivator? Are you King kidding me? Meng said, Give me another drop of your blood to try. I'll analyze it properly. Lin didn't care whether Meng was trying to cheat him out of his food or drink. He gave Meng a milliliter of his blood. Meng immediately began to lick Meng's blood hungrily. After a while, it smacked its lips as if it hadn't had enough. Master, how are you an ordinary cultivator? You have the purest blood I've ever seen. You're not a living being that should exist in this world. Through absorbing your blood, I can truly comprehend the true meaning of life. I feel that if we blood tribe members want to continue to evolve, we must use your blood as our goal and direction. Give me something practical. Lin said in a stern voice. Meng's skeletal frame shuddered. I think there are two reasons why your blood is so perfect. The first is that you were born with a special physique that is extremely close to the heavenly Tao. If I'm not wrong, it should be the Tianming Tao physique, right? Lin's heart jolted, but he maintained a smile on his face. Who would have thought that a skeleton like you would know so much? Meng replied honestly. I've inherited some of the blood patriarch's knowledge and experience. Lin nodded. Please continue. The Tianming Tao physique is extremely close to the heavenly Tao. Living beings with this physique have extremely pure blood and are extremely receptive to the power of the heavenly Tao and the underworld Tao. It's also extremely easy for them to cultivate, so it's not an exaggeration to call it the blood of the heavenly Tao. This kind of blood is very good, but it's not perfect. Meng looked at Lin with a scorching light in its eyes. Hence, I'm guessing that there's another power or something within your body that I can't understand. It can continuously improve your body and make your originally extremely pure blood even more perfect. Oh no, I can't just refer to your blood. I should say that it can make your life itself even more perfect. Lin understood now. His natural physique and the system's modifications had caused his body to become like this. Is this a blessing or a curse? Lin murmured. Meng was extremely excited. If this is a curse, then let me bear it. What a perfect body. That's the life I've been pursuing my entire life. Don't be ungrateful for your blessings. Lin's lips twitched slightly. What the *CK is ungrateful for my blessings? This system is a scam no matter how I look at it. Alright, that's what you said. If this is a curse, then you'll bear it. Lin chuckled. Then it's a promise. Master, what do you mean? Meng was momentarily at a loss for words. Lin didn't reply. Instead, he put Meng back into his storage ring. At the same time, he made a decision. If the system could be transferred to someone else, then it would be transferred to Meng. Chapter 1427. Lin composed himself before turning his attention to his system. The system had actually issued him a few new missions after he had progressed to the Return to Void stage, but all of them were extremely depressing. The only minor progress he had made was in the cultivation base category. He had already made a significant breakthrough in his progress to the Return to Void intermediate stage. Return to Void intermediate stage. Beat 9 Dao integration stage living beings into submission. Current progress, March 9th. When Lin had first seen this mission, he had actually despaired. He had only just progressed to the return to void stage, and you're telling me to beat 9 Dao integration stage super mighty figures into submission? Don't look down on me, system. Tui. No, wait, system, you're overestimating me. Enlin was so devastated that he immediately banished the system to oblivion. However, not long after that, he really did beat Dao integration stage super mighty figures into submission, and not just one of them. The list was as follows: Immortal King Feng Weao, Emperor Yi Deng, and Emperor An Mang. To put it more accurately, Emperor An Mang wasn't beaten into submission by his martial prowess. Instead, he was subdued by his blood. This method seemed to be quite useful, and Enlin wanted to pay another visit to the blood tribe. Only then would they have a chance to interact with one another. As for the Divine Might technique, it also had an upgrade requirement. Last time, it was the Great Divine Might technique, but this was even more powerful. It was the Super Divine Might technique, the Super Divine Might technique completion requirement. Beat a God of Creation stage living being into submission. Look at this. The system was making God of Creation stage living beings look like they were just playing games. Nuwa could easily beat him into submission with a flick of her finger, but how was he going to beat a god like Nuwa into submission? This was AF** King's suicidal mission. Enlin almost wanted to drag Tina out and beat her up, but he couldn't bring himself to do so. Little Na was so adorable, how could he bully her? Little Na. Enlin turned to the little fairy on his shoulder with a loving gaze. What is it, Giant Enlin? Tina opened her bleary eyes and pinched Enlin's earlobe with a confused expression. Are you at the Genesis tier? Enlin asked curiously. Tina shook her head with a smile. No, I only have the power of creation. In terms of cultivation base, I'm only at the return to void pinnacle stage. Oh. Enlin nodded in disappointment. Little Na was so adorable, so of course he couldn't lay a hand on her. Enlin turned his attention to another quest. This mission was related to moves, and it could be said to be the strongest move in the history of the system. It was a high-level war god spell. One had to realize that the 6 strikes of the war god and the origin energy of the netherworld were both intermediate-rank battle god spell techniques. So one could imagine just how bad *SS these high-rank battle god spell techniques were. Advanced War God Secret Technique. Dark Immortal Transformation. Condition to obtain the secret technique. Obtain the original skeleton of the Heavenly True Immortal and consume it. When Enlin saw the name of the Heavenly True Immortal's essence skeleton, he was dumbfounded. What the hell? Extraterrestrial True Immortal? Does such a thing exist on the Tai Chu continent? He didn't think much of it at the time, but he wanted to know more about it now. Enlin thought about it for a while and decided that the Celestial Arch was probably the most familiar with the most powerful beings related to immortals. He already stood at the pinnacle of the Celestial Court, so he should know something about this. With this in mind, Enlin dialed the Celestial Thearcha's voice transmission talisman. Hello, War God of the Celestial Court, what good news do you have for me? The Celestial Arch asked with a warm and enthusiastic smile. Enlin's battle in the Dark Marshlands had rocked the entire continent. He and the 4-9 Immortal sect were renowned across the entire continent. At the same time, as the War God of the Celestial Court, he had indirectly promoted the Celestial Court. At the very least, the Celestial Court's prestige and status on the continent had been elevated to a whole new level. The Celestial Arch knew that Enlin was a stock with immense potential, but he didn't think that his stock price would skyrocket so quickly. It had only been a few years, and the Celestial Court was already proud of him. Celestial Arch, I have a question for you. Do you know what a Heavenly True Immortal is? Enlin asked. What Heavenly True Immortal? The Celestial Arch faltered slightly. Heavenly True Immortal, Enlin repeated. Heavenly True Immortal? The Celestial Arch chuckled. Enlin. I'm serious. The celestial Tharch could tell from Enlin's tone that he wasn't joking, and he began to ponder this question. After a short while, he replied, I do have some recollection of this. I think I saw this title on a certain ancient plaque in the ancient Tai Chu realm 1,000,000 years ago. Enlin drew a sharp intake of breath. That long ago? The celestial Tharch replied, It is indeed a very long time ago. If you didn't bring it up, I would have almost forgotten about this title. Heavenly True Immortal. What a title! What do you mean? Enlin asked with excitement welling up in his heart. The celestial Tharch chuckled. Everyone knows that after the Tao integration stage, one will be able to fuse their Tao with heaven and earth, thereby allowing them to live as long as heaven and earth, and their lifespans are close to limitless. But no matter what, they are still going to die, and this is why Tao integration stage super mighty figures have fallen. Could it be that the heavenly true immortal is different? Enlin's heart jolted with shock. Of course it's different. The heavenly true immortal transcends beyond the three realms and does not exist within the five elements. Even if heaven and earth were to collapse and the sun and moon were to perish, it would still be able to exist for an eternity, the celestial Tharch replied. Enlin was given a fright. Is there really such a bad SS person in this world? The celestial Tharch heaved a faint sigh. I'm not sure. There were only a few fragments left on the ancient plaque, and I could only glean some general information from those fragments. In any case, the heavenly true immortal is at least on the same level as Nuwa, or perhaps even higher. Enlin, in that case, the system's mission was no longer a question of difficulty. It was a question that he didn't even dare to think about. How was he supposed to complete such a monstrous mission? Obtain the essential remains of the heavenly true immortal? He probably wouldn't even be able to see a single hair on the heavenly true immortal's body. That's all I know about the heavenly true immortal. There was a hint of yearning in the celestial Thearcha's voice as he said, Perhaps those legendary immortals are the ones we're looking for. That's right. Enlin sighed with emotion. That was indeed the direction he was looking for. He still had to eat the bones of the legendary immortal. Enlin ended the voice transmission with a dejected expression. After learning about the system's mission, he realized just how difficult the system's mission was. It was the equivalent of issuing a mission that had not been issued at all. Thankfully, there was no punishment for this type of mission. Otherwise, Enlin would become a eunuch or impotent for hundreds of thousands of years. Wait, why would he become a eunuch or impotent? Enlin's body shuddered, and he hurriedly tossed this accursed thought out of his mind. This damned subconscious was intolerable. Chapter 1428. At the moment, the system only had 3 missions, and none of them were easy. Enlin could only set aside the system to deal with more important matters. He gathered all of the higher-ups of the 4-9 Immortal sect for a meeting. Bai Ling wore a white lab coat and used a holographic projection to provide an explanation. The 4-9 Immortal sect has already sold all of the cultivation resources that the sect leader brought back from the Divine Source continent to all of the sects and business tycoons on the continent, and we've received a total of 356,110,000 spirit stones in total. Enlin nodded with a smile. Now that we have sufficient funds, what do you all think about my proposal? I second the motion. Su Xiaolan immediately voted in favor of the motion. Money is meant to be spent. I've been waiting for this day for a long time. I agree. Lu Qianhuan chimed in with a wide grin. Our 4-9 Immortal sect has already become the 5th sect in the Kingdom of the 9 States, so we have to live up to our reputation. I also agree. Xian Yuanqing smiled. The day I've been dreaming of is finally here. Su Qianyun's eyes shimmered with anticipation. Immediately afterward, Tina, Tobias, Bryce, and Xiao Zhe also expressed their support. Enlin's proposal received unanimous approval. Enlin slapped his hands onto the table with anticipation and excitement etched on his face. All right. Then let's officially start the sect's optimization and reconstruction project. We'll get the Grandmaster Construction Cultivator to come out and do it seriously. An indescribable sense of excitement appeared on everyone's faces upon hearing this. Thinking back to when they were building a new sect, they were looked down upon by the Grandmaster Construction Cultivator and Holy Lord Tion would due to their lack of financial resources. In the end, they could only swallow the humiliation and choose a random 3 million spirit stones project. At that time, they had a dream in their hearts. One day, they would make the Grandmaster Construction Cultivator kneel before them and beg them to take this project seriously. Now, they had already fulfilled half of their dreams, and they finally had a chance to take this Grandmaster Construction Cultivator seriously. This was a day worthy of celebration. Pitter-patter, firecrackers were set off outside the 4-9 Immortal sect. The sect master led a group of pavilion masters to beat gongs and drums outside the door. They were beaming with joy and pride. A confused expression appeared on Ada's face as she softly asked, "Pavilion Master Tobias, what is Enlin doing? Why is he so happy? I heard that they're going to renovate the sect, but I don't know why they're so happy." Tobias was a newcomer, and he was also quite confused. Behind them were dozens of core disciples from various pavilions. The disciples were also dumbfounded as they looked at the pavilion masters, who had completely collapsed. They didn't know what was wrong with them today. Why was Prince Charming Xianyuan blowing the trumpet? His image was ruined. There was also Goddess Su, who was beating her drums excitedly under the moonlight. As for Goddess Xiaolan, she was the mighty successor of the Vermilion Bird, but she kept throwing holy flames into the sky like fireworks. That was way too cheap. After a heated celebration in advance, Enlin smashed the white jade with a heroic expression. "Grandmaster Construction Cultivator, get out here." All the disciples jumped in fright. Was this summoning an enemy? Bang! The white jade was shattered. A piece of information proliferated throughout heaven and earth. Everyone looked up into the sky with anticipation on their faces, as if they were waiting for something. Not long after that, a crack suddenly appeared in the air above the grassland. A woman in a short red dress with a pair of long, snowy white legs emerged from the crack with a kick. She looked at Enlin with a charming smile on her face. "Oh, the renowned sect leader Enlin, what business do you have with me?" The woman also wore a short V-neck short-sleeved shirt. Not only did she have a sexy, curvaceous waist, but she also had a strong sense of professionalism, giving onlookers a sense of excitement. That's right, she was the Grandmaster Enlin wanted to get serious with. Tui. She was a Grandmaster Construction Cultivator. Some of the disciples drew a sharp intake of breath upon seeing her chest for the first time. Enlin chuckled coldly. "What business do you have with me?" He made his way over to the Grandmaster Construction Cultivator, and his storage ring flashed. Rumble! A huge number of spirit stones fell to the ground like a mountain, causing the ground to tremor violently. All the disciples' mouths gaped open as they stared blankly at the glowing green crystals under the sun. There were as many of them as a mountain, and all the disciples' hearts were pounding as if they were free. "I can swear that I've never seen so many spirit stones in my life." "How many spirit stones is this?" "It has to be over 100 million, right?" "Wrong. It's several 100 million. Almost all of the disciples had the same question in their minds. What was sect leader Enlin trying to do? Enlin turned to the Grandmaster Construction Cultivator, and sure enough, he saw a hint of shock on her face, which made him feel extremely elated. "Grandmaster Construction Cultivator, I've made a fool of myself. I only managed to collect 300 million spirit stones after 2 to 3 years. I want to make the sect a little more beautiful, so I wanted you to come here and help me with some renovations. 300 million spirit stones should be enough, right?" Enlin asked with a nonchalant expression. The Grandmaster Construction Cultivator's lips twitched slightly. I already told you that 300 million spirit stones is the price for a serious renovation. Oh, I see. Is your serious renovation really that cheap? Alright, then let's get serious and make our sect a little better. At the very least, it has to be comparable to one of the four great sects. Unlin chuckled. The veins on the Grandmaster Construction Cultivator's forehead bulged. Why do I feel like beating someone up? She took a deep breath to force herself to calm down. Unlin was ecstatic. He loved to see the Grandmaster Construction Cultivator get angry, but there was nothing she could do about it. You look down on me because I didn't have any money yesterday, but I can also look down on you with a huge sum of money today. Not only Enlin, but even Xiao Zhe, Su Xiaolan, and Xianyuan Cheng were feeling extremely elated. This was a day for them to hold their heads up high. The Grandmaster Construction Cultivator waved a hand, and the mountainous pile of spirit stones in front of her was stowed away into her storage ring. A serious renovation will require all of my time and energy, and I'll need to do a lot of preparatory work as well. I'll complete all of these preparatory work within a month. Seeing as she was going to get serious, she wasn't going to slack off. She was going to give it her all. All right, thank you for your hard work, Ms. Construction Cultivator. Unlin smiled. He wasn't surprised by the preparation time of the Grandmaster Construction Cultivator. After all, they were going to build a sect that could rival the four great immortal sects that had existed for tens of thousands of years. How could it be compared to something that could be casually made in a day? Wait for my news. I'll be making preparations with Holy Lord Tianhua first. The Grandmaster Construction Cultivator waved her hand in farewell. Go, big sister Sinew. I hope you won't disappoint me, Unlin said with a buoyant smile. The Grandmaster Construction Cultivator pursed her lips and harumphed lightly before tearing open a spatial rift and departing. After the departure of the Grandmaster Construction Cultivator, the development of the 4-9 Immortal sect returned to normal as they waited for the Grandmaster Construction Cultivator to arrive again. Who would have thought that the Grandmaster Construction Cultivator wouldn't come, but an unexpected guest would arrive.